Chapter 178. The wind was blowing, the autumn water was piercing. My dear friend's journey was long, 10,000 years would pass. There was wind in the air. There were people above the clouds. Yuji was dressed in red, looking at the windwheel mountain. There was no doubt that Yuji was a peerless beauty. Her eyes were filled with boundless love. However, even she could not see through the green mist formation of the windwheel mountain. It really looked like a painting of a green mountain. Boom, boom, whoosh, rumble, the 5 wheels swept across the ancestral spirit peak. At this moment, the nascent soul cultivators of the 5 wheels and White Bones sects had already started fighting. This battle was far greater than any of the sects' battles. The power of the nascent soul was like a hurricane. All kinds of great techniques covered the sky. In terms of numbers, the Slekton sect had 2 more people, and in terms of cultivation level, the 5 wheels was slightly stronger. In a short period of time, it was hard to tell who was stronger. However, the Slekton sect gradually gained the upper hand. The 9 nascent soul cultivators had gradually suppressed the 7 ancestors of the ancestral spirit peak. The blind ancestor had the highest cultivation level among the 2 sections. The peak late-stage nascent soul cultivator was a soul transformation cultivator. The blind ancestor knew that he could never become a soul transformation cultivator. This was because he had lived for too many years through a secret technique. On the ancestral spirit peak, he was the oldest nascent soul cultivator. However, ever since he took charge of the 5 wheels, the 5 wheels could be said to be in a decline. The burden of the 5 wheels was too heavy for him. He had always wanted to be the carefree and happy blind person of the past. He was tired of all the deceit and intrigue. He had thought of giving up many times. However, he could not forget the kindness of his master. He did not want to let down his master's trust. He was originally an abandoned blind child who was carried by his master to the 5 wheels. From then on, he became a cultivator. His master was clearly on the 5 wheels. Why did he not show up? That day when he led Sumo into the windwheel, his master also told him, "Blind, do not worry. Your master is with you." But now, the 5 wheels is almost destroyed. Where is master? The blind man could not understand. He even regretted letting the nascent soul on the ancestral soul take action. Even if it was a life and death struggle, it might be better than the current situation. Boom! Just as the blind patriarch was deep in thought, the 2 nascent soul stage cultivators from the Slekton sect actually joined forces and slashed one of the nascent soul stage cultivators from the 5 wheels into the void. The death of a nascent soul was like a meteor streaking across the sky. Nascent soul cultivators were definitely grand cultivators of the bone continent. It has to be said that a normal cultivator would need hundreds or even thousands of years to reach the nascent soul realm. Cultivators who could cultivate to the nascent soul stage were 1 in 10,000. Which nascent soul cultivator wasn't an elite in the past? Which nascent soul cultivator wasn't all-powerful back then? The death of a nascent soul cultivator was extremely tragic. The cultivators on the 5 wheels were, of course, incomparably terrified. The disciples of the Slekton sect were also somewhat sympathetic. However, this was a battle, and there were bound to be casualties. Junior Brother Long, shouted another nascent soul realm cultivator on 5 wheels. This was because the nascent soul cultivator who had just fallen was of the same lineage as him. Puff. However, the moment he shouted, a voice suddenly rang out. An immortal sword directly pierced through his immortal heart. Everything happened in an instant when a nascent soul cultivator attacked. Boom! At the same time, a nascent soul cultivator from the Slekton sect was blasted into pieces by a late-stage nascent soul cultivator from the 5 wheels. A total of 3 nascent soul cultivators from the 2 sects had fallen. In an instant, the entire situation had reached a boiling point. At the moment, the Slekton sect had 8 nascent soul cultivators and 5 wheels were left. If this continued, the 5 wheels would definitely lose, and the Selectan sect would also be greatly weakened. In the air, Chen Fubai frowned. He didn't want the Selectan sect to exhaust itself like this. Yu Ji, however, looked at Chen Fubai and smiled. Senior, if you don't make a move, we won't either. If you do, the soul disintegration cultivator from the 5 wheels will start a massacre. Unless you're confident that you can kill us all in an instant. Otherwise, before you kill us all, no one from the Selectan sect will be left alive. Because there is only one soul disintegration cultivator in the Selectan sect. Yu Ji licked her red lips seductively. That action was filled with a thirst for blood. Half of Chen Fubai's face twitched. He really couldn't kill 2 mid-stage soul disintegration cultivators in an instant, not to mention that there was at least 1 soul disintegration cultivator in the 5 wheels. The Grand Cultivator who set up the 5 wheels formation had yet to show himself. And he must be inside the 5 wheels. Boom, crack, another 2 meteors fell from the sky. On the ancestral spirit peak, another nascent soul cultivator from the 5 wheels and the Selectan sect had fallen. At this moment, the blind patriarch sighed in his heart. He seemed to have no other choice. A Taoist technique appeared in his hand. It was an earth-shattering grand technique. Peak nascent soul late stage. A halo suddenly appeared around the blind patriarch's body to protect him. At that moment, his power was as majestic as the ocean. All the nascent soul power was mobilized by him. The entire ancestral spirit peak was shaking. It was a kind of resonance. Senior brother blind. Senior brother blind. The remaining 3 nascent soul cultivators of the 5 wheels shouted at the same time. Because they knew that the blind patriarch had a secret technique, ancestral soul destruction. That Taoist technique used one's body as a guide to unleash the power of the entire ancestral spirit peak. Once the power of the ancestral spirit peak was unleashed, the 5 wheels would be razed to the ground, and none of the cultivators present would survive. It was a mutual destruction technique. Only the blind patriarch could use the entire 5 wheels. Therefore, the 3 nascent soul cultivators' expressions changed drastically. The nascent soul cultivators of the Selectan sect also had a bad feeling, but none of them had the ability to stop the blind patriarch. In the sky, Chen Fubai couldn't care less. He couldn't let the blind patriarch use that technique. In an instant, he dove down toward the ancestral spirit peak. There were 2 rays of light behind him, one black and one red. A soul transformation realm cultivator had finally made his move. In the air, the power of the soul transformation realm spread out and covered the nascent soul aura from before. At that moment, everyone's gaze turned toward the sky. A white ray of light shot down toward the ancestral spirit peak. Many cultivators couldn't even see what it was. However, the blind patriarch instantly felt the pressure of the soul transformation realm. His technique stopped midway. My life is over. The blind patriarch had no way of resisting such a powerful soul transformation realm cultivator. On Tianluan Mountain, Yang Tianxiao and Yin Zhongmo's expressions changed. Yang Tianxiao didn't expect a soul transformation realm cultivator to appear. Would the situation where the 5 wheels and white bones were both heavily injured still happen? Yin Zhongmo was thinking in his heart, Patriarch, are you still not going to show yourself? If I were you, I wouldn't mind dying for the 5 wheels. They were both ambitious people, but their thoughts were different at the last moment. At that crucial moment, the ground beneath Tianluan Mountain suddenly shook and a bright light exploded out. A white-haired old man charged into the sky. White Bone's soul transformation realm, you dare to offend my 5 wheels. I will kill you according to the instructions of my ancestors. Similarly, a ray of white light shot toward Chen Fubai. The soul transformation realm battle was about to begin. Chapter 179. Great Perfection Late Soul Transformation Realm. That was the pinnacle existence of the Bone Continent. After all, there were only a handful of deity tribulation stage cultivators in the entire Bone Continent. Back then, Xingluan was only at the peak late-stage soul transformation realm. At this moment, Chen Fubai charged towards the ancestral spirit peak with the force of wind and lightning. This was definitely a power that nascent soul cultivators couldn't resist. If there were no soul dispersers to resist, Chen Fubai alone would be enough to destroy the entire five-wheel sect. However, the five wheels had soul dispersers, and not just one of them. Boom, crack, at the foot of the Earth Wheel Mountain, the white-haired patriarch who had been dormant for 10,000 years soared into the sky and headed straight for Chen Fubai. Late-stage soul transformation realm. Chen Fubai was shocked, because the soul transformation cultivator who suddenly rushed out was not that mute cultivator. Late-stage soul transformation realm, of course, he still couldn't compare to Chen Fubai, but he definitely had the ability to fight him. One swooped down, the other met it head-on. Boom, boom. Two great soul transformation forms, two powerful forces, fiercely collided. At that moment it was as if the heavens were being split apart. Whoosh, spiritual energy spread out, surging like the sea. Even the dozen or so nascent soul cultivators who were fighting just now had to retreat and defend themselves. With the ancestral spirit peak as the center, endless power roared out in all directions. 1,000 feet of light, rolling clouds, toppling mountains and overturning seas. At the center of the power, Chen Fubai was dressed in a snow-white robe, but he was half human and half ghost. The Earth Wheel Great Ancestor was dressed in a brownish-yellow robe. His face was pale and bloodless. Second senior brother. Yuji was already behind Chen Fubai. The Earth Wheel Ancestor was the second disciple of Xingluan, Niexiang. This Niexiang had a tyrannical personality. He was the most unruly in the past. His attitude toward the Slekton sect was simple. Those who obey me will prosper, and those who oppose me will perish. After the death of Xingluan, he did as he pleased. The five-wheel Great Formation was his masterpiece. He originally wanted to gather the souls of the 5 chakras and the chi of the 5 chakras to form the deity tribulation body. Unfortunately, man proposes, God disposes. One of the 5 soul-gathering pearls was missing. Previously, he had been waiting and pinning his hopes on Yin Zhongmo obtaining the soul-gathering pearl. Unfortunately, it seemed impossible at the moment. The deity tribulation was hopeless. Niexiang's lifespan was less than 100 days. Therefore, in the end, he chose to rush out of the Earthwheel Mountain. This meant that he had given up on the formation I of the 5-wheel formation and his last hope of survival. He could only fight to the death for the 5 rounds. On Tianluan Mountain, Yin Zhongmo heaved a long sigh, and a rare look of respect appeared in his eyes. This was because he understood that the Earth Wheel Ancestor had ultimately chosen the 5 wheels. Who, at this moment, the red caltrop in Yuji's hand shook like a red snake. He swept up the soul-dissolving power and charged at Chen Fubai. Yuji did not have the same temperament as Kenlongzi. Yuji had too much of a demonic nature about her. It was good enough that she didn't kill others. How could she let others kill her? Even with the teachings of the sacred wheel, she would choose to follow it. What's this about? Those who see the floating white are willing to be a ghost under the knife? To Yuji that was a joke. She, Yuji, could only remember one thing: if his soul came out, she could kill him. This ancestral teaching was before the pedantic ancestral teaching. Therefore, she showed no mercy. The red caltrop was like a blood knife. Anyone who touched it would die. Among all the people in the world, Yuji wanted to listen to Junior Marshal Brother Feng. If Junior Marshal Brother Feng died, she would be willing to die. However, that enemy did not show up. The Earth Wheel Ancestor Niexiang was at the late stage of soul transformation. Chen Fubai was not afraid, but there were still 2 middle-stage soul transformation cultivators chasing him. Yuji's red caltrop flew over. Chen Fubai did not even turn his head, and only snorted coldly. Then, he suddenly formed a seal with both hands. A beam of white light shot out from Chen Fubai's back. Then, the white light took form. It was actually a cultivator in white, another Chun Fubai. However, this Chun Fubai was younger, and a complete person. He was as handsome as jade, and extremely handsome. Holding a silver spear, he directly met Yuji's red caltrop. Soul-dissolving body. Yuji could not help but praise Chun Fubai in her heart. Kenlongzi originally did not want to make a move. But now, he had no choice but to make a move. Because, the ancestral teaching indeed wrote, if a soul-dissolving body comes out, he can be killed. Moreover, the situation at this moment was already somewhat out of control. Soul-dissolving body fighting. He could not just stand by and watch. Boom, par, Kenlongzi waved the whip in his hand, like a black bolt of lightning. In the void, lightning flashed and thunder roared. That whip was a soul transformation level divine weapon, and its power was extraordinary. And behind Chun Fubai, a white light once again shone out. This time, it wasn't another Chun Fubai. Instead, it was a skeleton. That skeleton wielded a long dagger axe, emitting a soaring aura of death, and charged straight at Kenlongzi. Soul transformation great perfection, 3 souls in one breath. However, Chun Fubai cultivated the Deadwood Undying technique, causing Chun Fubai's 3 souls to be somewhat special. 1 cultivator, 1 human, 1 ghost. That Chun Fubai was indeed a first-step deity tribulation cultivator. Now that he was using a shocking technique, even 1 against 3, he was not at a disadvantage. Soul transformation great perfection was indeed a terrifying existence. At this moment, all the spectating cultivators found it hard to breathe or hear, because the pressure of a soul-dissolving body was too powerful. This battle had completely exceeded everyone's expectations and imagination. Slekton Sect's sect leader Bai Zongchen and the green-robed ancestor both had solemn expressions. No matter what, they had not expected that in this battle, 3 soul-dissolving bodies would suddenly appear on 5 wheels. But why did they not make a move just now? Could it be that this was the reason why so many cultivators of 5 wheels would rather die than surrender? At this moment, the blind ancestor and the others were even more shocked. The appearance of the 3 5-wheels soul transformation patriarchs was equivalent to announcing the reversal of 5 wheels. But what about Master? Blind was still puzzled? Were the patriarchs who had left back then all returning? Could it be that the 5 great patriarchs of 5 wheels were still alive? That was the heyday of 5 wheels. Then in these 10,000 years, why did no one care about 5 wheels? Blind's heart was filled with endless mysteries. But no matter what, 5 wheels should no longer be at the mercy of others. The appearance of the soul-dissolving bodies had changed the situation and even the nature of this battle. At this moment, Guan Xiong, who was still watching from the void, had a somewhat solemn expression. Because he suddenly felt that everything did not seem so simple. Everything that happened with 5 wheels was too abnormal. Illogical. If things were abnormal, there must be something wrong. With 3 great soul-dissolving bodies, they actually sat back and did nothing about the destruction of their sect. If the opponent's soul-dissolving cultivators did not make a move, they would not make a move. Why was this so? In the void, the power of the soul-dissolving bodies spread throughout the 5 wheels. 4 top experts used their great technique. Chun Fubai really did have some shocking methods. 1 split into 3. Other than his main body that had reached the late stage of the soul-dissolving realm, the other 2 were both in the middle stage of the soul-dissolving realm. It had to be said that Chun Fubai had endured for 40,000 years just for this day. Originally, he was wary of the 5 wheels formation. However, he didn't expect that someone would accidentally break through the 5-wheel great formation. In this battle, Chun Fubai had completely let go. Since he had already made a move, then there was no need to worry too much. Kill. This was the only question in his mind. He wanted to kill like Saint Will back then. But at this moment, Guan Xiong's expression changed once again. because he suddenly realized that the entire Five Wheels immortal domain was gently moving up and down, but the people of Five Wheels and White Bones did not realize this. It was like a person recovering his breathing. Guan Xiong's expression completely changed. Chapter 180. In the air, Guan Xiong locked his eyes. At this moment, the aura of the entire Five Paths immortal realm was changing. The change was inexplicable and inexplicable. However, Guan Xiong only realized it after the four soul transformation cultivators attacked. The aura of the soul transformation cultivators seemed to have alerted something. What was that? The Five Paths immortal realm once again undulated rhythmically. Guan Xiong's spirit sense was far more sensitive than anyone else. The undulation of the Five Paths immortal realm was not something anyone from the Five Wheels or Slekton sect could feel. Not even the soul transformation cultivators. Guan Xiong formed a seal with both hands and his eyes were filled with lightning. At this moment, the geography of the entire Bone mainland, the mountains and rivers, were reflected in Guan Xiong's eyes. Although his eyes were small, they were really bright. Look to the north. The entire Slekton sect immortal realm was also slightly undulating. However, the undulation seemed to be after the Five Paths immortal realm. Look to the south. Luckily, there was no movement in the Bone mainland for the time being. Guan Xiong's expression turned slightly better. Because it was not the entire Bone mainland that was moving. Otherwise, he, as the Bone Patrol envoy, would not be able to control the situation. The Bone mainland was like a person lying on its side. Guan Xiong thought of the legend of the Bone mainland and shuddered. However, as the soul transformation cultivators fought and the aura of the soul transformation cultivators were released, the Five Wheels undulated more and more. This undulation would soon be felt by the soul transformation cultivators, then the nascent soul cultivators, then the core formation cultivators, and finally all the cultivators would feel the abnormality. Because it was not a simple earthquake but a kind of awakening. Was the sleeping earth awakening? At this moment, Guan Xiong was no longer as wretched as before. He seemed to understand why the Five Wheels cultivators did not make a move. Because they did not want to alert the souls of the Bone mainland. Guan Xiong could not just sit and watch. Boom, crack, boom. The battle in the ancestral soul void became even more intense. The four soul transformation cultivators actually cast a powerful spell at the same time. Crippled Longzi, the Earth Wheel ancestor, and Yu all had a tacit understanding. The three grandmasters of the Five Wheels exerted their strength at the same time. Black, red, and yellow streaks of soul-dissolving qi shot toward Chen Fubai from three different directions. At this moment, Chen Fubai was smiling coldly. His true body, human body, and skeleton body formed a triangle. The three of them were one. In an instant, the aura of the great perfection of the soul transformation realm flowed between the three souls. Chen Fubai's three souls each swept up a powerful force and went up against the three forefathers of the Five Wheels. Boom, boom, crack. 6 streams of qi suddenly collided. At that moment, the entire Five Wheels mountain range shook. This happened to conceal the breathing rhythm of the entire Five Paths immortal domain. The clash between the four patriarchs was no longer a contest of magical techniques, but a contest of pure spiritual power. After the 6 streams of air collided, they converged into 3 streams, which then soared into the sky. At the same time, the 3 patriarchs on the Five Wheels were sent flying. Even they couldn't completely withstand the turbulence of the airflow. Wow Wu, crippled Longzi and Yu landed tens of miles away, spurting out blood. Niexiang's pale face turned purplish red. It was obvious that all 3 were injured, but their reactions were different. Looking again, Chen Fubai's 3 souls had already merged into one. However, half of his face was as pale as paper, and the light on the other half of his skeleton body dimmed slightly. Chen Fubai was the only one who could withstand the attacks of the 3 soul transformation realm experts. If it was anyone else, it would be difficult. This was a situation where both sides were injured. However, it seemed that Chun Fubai still had a slight advantage. At the same time, Chun Fubai raised his skeletal arm again. His 5 fingers were sinister and cold. He decided to use all his strength to kill one person, and then think of other plans. At that moment, even Guan Xiong felt the power of the soul transformation realm soaring into the sky. However, at the same time, Guan Xiong also saw 2 beams of light suddenly rushing up from the 2 mountain peaks of the Slekton sect. The essence rushing up to the sky, it was a strange phenomenon. What's the White Eye Peak? The White Eye Peak's strange phenomenon. There were still some disciples stationed in the Slekton sect. They also saw the 2 beams of light rushing up. The Slekton sect had 2 White Eye Peaks, one on the left and one on the right. However, no one knew what kind of light it was. They only felt that the 2 beams of light were very strange. 5 wheels, Mountain Gate abode. Actually, there were people in the Mountain Gate abode. It was just that when Sumo came, she could not see them. Because Sumo's cultivation level was still not high enough. Just now, there was a deep sigh coming from inside the abode. Inside the abode there were people, and there was wine. On the stone table, there were 4 dishes and a jar of aged wine. The dishes were delicious, and the wine was fragrant. 3 people were sitting around the table, talking and laughing. Judging from the dishes on the table, the drinking had been going on for quite some time. Among the 3 people, one of them was a young man wearing a gray robe, and he looked to be about 17 or 18 years old. His lips were red, his teeth white, and he had delicate features. At this moment, his cheeks were slightly red, and he seemed to be a little drunk. However, his eyes were clear. The other person was a middle-aged cultivator in a white robe. He had a dignified appearance, and his face was like jade. He held a folding fan in his hand, and his eyes were quite elegant. At this moment, the middle-aged cultivator was holding a cup with one hand, and his eyes were looking at the stone wall of the sect abode thoughtfully. The other person was actually Bai Lai. Bai Lai was wearing a shabby white robe, and he looked sloppy. At this moment, the cups and plates in front of him were messy, and he seemed to be very drunk. However, Bai Lai was still gesticulating and pointing. His mouth flowed like a river. Look, this is the so-called Holy Wheel Ancestral Behest. Which one of you can understand it? How is this ancestral behest? It's clearly the mystery of the Holy Wheel. Bai Lai picked up a cup of wine, drank it in one gulp, and said with a sarcastic tone. However, it was not known whether he was mocking himself for not understanding it, or mocking the Holy Wheel Ancestral Master for being too vague. At the same time, he waved one hand. On the stone wall of the Mountain Gate abode, the lines of ancient characters shone again. These ancient characters were written in an ancient style, but they were also messy and profound. Obviously, the person who left these words must have wanted to be concise, but his thoughts were in a mess, and he wanted to say something but stopped. The book said, "Don't ask about the past of the white bones. Don't ask about the future of the 5 wheels. Kill for the sake of all living beings. I have no regrets in this life. After 100,000 years of peace, what crime have I committed? My 5 disciples must leave the 5 wheels. If their souls come out, they can be killed. A tribulation every 30,000 years, no one can return. Those who meet Fubai are willing to be ghosts under the knife." Ha ha! Bai Lai pointed at the lines of ancient characters, then looked at the young man and the middle-aged cultivator, and said, "Which one of you can understand this so-called Holy Wheel Ancestral Behest?" Back then, it was because we had a different understanding of the last ancestral behest. The 5 disciples of the Holy Wheel fell apart and went their separate ways, Bai Lai continued. The middle-aged cultivator in white spoke first, and couldn't help but laugh. "What separate ways? That Nyes-yang and you didn't leave, right? It's just that no one in the 5 wheels can recognize you. My 5 disciples must leave the 5 wheels. A tribulation every 30,000 years, no one can return. The young man in white also laughed and said, "But you 5 disciples of the Holy Wheel are really unfilial. 2 of you didn't even leave the 5 wheels, and you actually all returned after the tribulation every 30,000 years. Hee, if I were the Holy Wheel ancestral master, I wouldn't let you unfilial children off after reincarnation. Ha ha!" When Bai Lai heard the young man say this, he couldn't help but laugh. The 5 wheels ancestral behest is nothing. Chapter 181. I'm not a 5-wheel cultivator. I can't repay my master's kindness in this life. Bai Lai let out a long sigh. Hee. The middle-aged cultivator in white looked at Bai Lai and sneered. Old Bai, since you know your master's kindness, why are you still hesitating? Although your origin is not in the 5-wheel, you have been blessed by the 5-wheel in this life. Now that the 5-wheel is in chaos, how can you sit back and watch? Although the Holy Wheel ancestral behest didn't say it clearly, the Holy Wheel ancestral master probably doesn't want the 5-wheel to be destroyed. Bai Lai, you have to take action against the 5-wheel tribulation. The plain-clothed young man looked at Bai Lai and said solemnly, "End your fate. Your wind wheel will go back to where it belongs. However, this white skeleton must not be awakened." With that, the plain-clothed young man waved his hand. The Holy Wheel ancestral behest disappeared, and was replaced by a bird's-eye view of the White Skeleton Continent. The White Skeleton Continent was located in the southeast of the Pure Land. It was shaped like a crescent moon, but it also looked like a person lying on his side. However, the person's body was half-twisted, and he seemed to be looking at something. On the ribs of the White Skeleton Continent, there was a faint purple light. That was the location of the Holy Wheel ruins in the White Bone Ridge. Overlooking the White Bone Continent, it was a very strange scene. The 4 sides of the Bone Continent were pitch black, and nothing could be seen on the map. The plain-clothed young man seemed to have only shown the appearance of the White Skeleton Continent. According to the legends, the White Skeleton Continent was surrounded by an endless eternal sky trench. There were thousands of ancient beasts and demons in the eternal sky trench, and only the deity Tribulation body could fly through it. At this moment, in the north of the White Skeleton Continent, the head of the human figure emitted 2 faint rays of light. It was a pair of eyes. At the same time, the chest of the human figure rose and fell slightly. That was the location of the 5-wheel immortal domain. Bai Lai, look. The plain-clothed young man pointed at the White Skeleton map. The location of the 5 wheels basically belongs to the 5 internal organs of this skeleton. I think the Holy Wheel ancestral master must have had a deeper meaning when he created the 5 wheels. Maybe he wants to use the power of the 5 wheels to suppress white bones. However, the soul-dissolving chi will disturb white bone. This was probably the reason why white bone and 5 chakras could not have soul transformation realm cultivators. Saint Wheel might know the secret of the bone continent. The plain-clothed youth speculated. The white-robed cultivator remained silent. The plain-clothed youth's conjecture made some sense, but it couldn't explain everything. However, there was no better way to put it. Hee. At this time, Bai Lai wiped his tears and looked at the map again. He smiled bitterly and said, "A skeleton can actually give birth to all living things. The White Bone Continent was also a miracle. What a pity for these soulless skeletons. Even if it doesn't have a soul, it's still a creature of the Pure Land. We can't just sit and watch." The white-robed middle-aged cultivator sighed. The plain-clothed youth and Bai Lai both nodded. "What about Mu Jinghong?" Bai Lai asked again. "Unfortunately, we can't see through Mu Jinghong's background. However, she seemed to have another request. Just now, she was clearly asking for death, since she barged into the windwheel array. Then let the 9 revolutions windwheel send you guys on your way," the white-robed cultivator said. "That way, it can also temper Sumo's character." The white-robed cultivator looked at Bai Lai and added, "Those with a soul naturally have nothing to worry about." The plain-clothed youth chuckled. "Sumo, it's all up to him now." Bai Lai smiled bitterly and raised his wine glass. "That's right. Sumo, it's all up to him now." The plain-clothed youth and the white-robed cultivator raised their wine glasses at the same time. The three of them clinked their glasses and looked at each other and laughed loudly. Then, the three of them stood up at the same time and walked out of the cave. Bai Lai walked in front. In the void of the ancestral spirit peak, Chen Fubai moved and turned into a ray of white light, heading straight for the red-robed Yuji. Compared to crippled Longzi and Yesyang, Yuji's combat strength should be the weakest. Among the 5 great disciples of Shengluan, the first disciple, crippled Longzi, was an expert in taming beasts and was a spirit cultivator. However, crippled Longzi didn't let the white dragon divine beast participate in the battle. Otherwise, his battle prowess would be comparable to the soul transformation late stage. The second disciple, Yesyang, had a violent personality. It could be seen from the fact that he wanted to borrow the living beings of the 5 wheels to help him pass the god tribulation. Their techniques were all methods of great annihilation and slaughter. Now that he was in the late stage of the soul transformation realm, he was definitely not easy to deal with. The fourth disciple, the mute warrior, was rumored to have a high cultivation level and was proficient in all kinds of techniques. However, he never spoke a single word in his life. His actions spoke for him. This time, he did not show himself. The fifth disciple, Feng Shi, was mysterious and unrestrained. It was rumored that his wisdom was unparalleled, and he could deduce the past and future. He was proficient in invincible formations. However, he rarely fought with others and was unfathomable. This time, Feng Shi didn't show up either. In terms of combat power, the third disciple, Yu Ji, was the weakest among the 5 Holy Wheel disciples. Because Yu Ji cultivated in the art of bewitchment. Although she was also at the intermediate stage of the soul transformation realm, she would be at a disadvantage in a life-and-death battle like today. Chen Fubai was a half-withered man, and his will was extremely strong. Her bewitching technique was completely ineffective, using one's weakness to attack one's strength. How could he not be at a disadvantage? At this moment, Chen Fubai saw this point. After being injured, he went straight for Yuji. His 5 skeletal fingers were surrounded by white light. The power of the soul transformation realm condensed at his fingertips, and he went straight for Yuji's head. Yuji spat out a mouthful of blood, staining her red clothes. She did not expect Chen Fubai's 3 souls to combine into one and go straight for her. This time, it was too late for her to dodge. Because her speed could no longer be faster than Chen Fubai's. She could only block. Go! The red caltrop in Yuji's hand shook. The red caltrop turned into a circle and wrapped around Chen Fubai's skeletal arm like waves. Chen Fubai snorted coldly, not taking it seriously at all. Whoosh, 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 Yuji held the red caltrop in her hand and rolled it. The red caltrop really wrapped around Chen Fubai's skeletal arm. Restrain! Yuji shouted coldly. The red caltrop instantly tightened like a red rope, and it quickly tightened. Although Yuji's red caltrop was not a soul transformation realm divine weapon, it was still an extraordinary treasure. At this moment, if it was an ordinary item, it would have been turned to dust under the restraint of the red caltrop. However, Chen Fubai's skeletal arm did not move at all. At the same time, a strange light flashed in Chen Fubai's single eye, and he shouted, "Immortal flame!" Whoosh, whoosh, in an instant Chen Fubai's skeletal arm was ablaze with endless white flames. Whoosh, Yuji's red caltrop was ignited. Yuji quickly withdrew the red caltrop. Even so, half of the red caltrop had been burned. Immortal flame. That was Chen Fubai's secret technique. He only used it at the most crucial moment. It was indeed effective. Yuji was caught off guard. Chen Fubai's 5 skeletal fingers were already 3 inches away from Yuji's head. Just a slight touch and Yu would definitely die. Nyeshyang's heavy punch and crippled Longzi's black whip were all heading for Chen Fubai. However, they were too late. In an instant, a soft shout came from the void. Feng Shi is here, who dares to act rashly? Whoosh. Chapter 182. The soul transformation skeleton was comparable to a heaven-grade weapon. However, the paper fan that was flying over from afar was even more powerful than that. Chi, crack. The paper fan flew over with a white light that was as thin as a cicada's wing. Chen Fubai's 5 skeleton fingers were cut off. That scene instantly shocked everyone. Chen Fubai's expression changed drastically. What kind of fan was that? However, there was no light from a Dharma treasure on the paper fan. Moreover, it flew back directly at this moment. Boom, pa! At the same time, Nyeshyang's heavy punch and Kan Longzi's black whip landed almost at the same time. However, Chen Fubai instantly neutralized the two attacks. In the void, the aura of the soul transformation realm spread out again. The undulation of the 5 paths immortal realm seemed to be more rapid. Chen Fubai looked in the direction where the paper fan came from. Yu took the opportunity to fly back hundreds of meters. Who dared to act rashly with Feng Shi here? That soft shout was the one that Yu had been longing for. Junior brother Feng, Yu turned to look. However, she didn't see the young man in her memory. Instead, she saw a sloppy and wretched old man. That old man was Bai Lai. Feng Shi. Yuji's expression changed. He was too different from the image in her memory. Could it be that even a soul transformation realm expert couldn't maintain his appearance after 10,000 years? I'm Feng Shi. Greetings, senior brothers and senior sister Yuji. Bai Lai cupped his fists in the void. Then, he took one step at a time very slowly. He was holding the paper fan in his hand. However, the image of Bai Lai holding a paper fan was very awkward no matter how one looked at it. There seemed to be no aura coming from Bai Lai. Kan Longzi looked at Bai Lai and frowned. Junior brother Feng? Because Bai Lai was too different from the handsome junior brother Feng of the past. However, he could feel that it was really Feng Shi. Junior brother Feng? Ha! Nyeshyang, the Earth Wheel ancestor, sneered. Feng Shi, you've been hiding well for the past 10,000 years. You actually didn't follow the teachings of the sacred wheel? Same to you. Bai Lai laughed. Second senior brother, we haven't left the 5 wheels yet, right? It's just that I can see the light every day, but you can't bear to part with the 5-wheel restriction formation. 10,000 years of darkness, you are really bitter. Bai Lai laughed. Humph. Nyeshyang did not say anything else, because if he tried to force his way out, only death awaited him. If not for Chen Fubai's intervention today, he probably would not have come out of the formation. Wind Wheel Founding Master. Whoosh! At that moment, everyone on 5 wheels was dumbfounded. There was even an endless uproar. Wasn't that Bai Lai? The old beggar, Bai Lai, was the legendary Wind Wheel Patriarch, Feng Shi. This fact was even more unacceptable than the invasion of the Slekton sect. Within 5 wheels, Bai Lai was a celebrity. The cultivators and child cultivators who were lucky enough to survive on Yangzhen Peak felt dizzy. The inner sect cultivators who had dealt with Bai Lai before also grimaced in pain. All of this was too unreal. After all, many of them had beaten and cursed Bai Lai. They beat and cursed Windwheel Founding Master Feng Shi. At the thought of it, they felt that they had courted death. At that moment, the blind patriarch was also shocked. Although he was blind, he was not affected at all. After all, Bai Lai's appearance was not the same as the master who had given him pointers that day. The blind patriarch's master had always been a white-robed middle-aged cultivator. What was going on? The appearance of Bai Lai shocked everyone. You're not Feng Shi. Yuji stared at Bai Lai. How did the Feng Shi she liked become an old beggar? Yuji was a peerless beauty with endless elegance. Bai Lai was embarrassed. Senior Sister Yuji, I've lived for 10,000 years. How can I be like you? I still look the same. Sigh. I'm old. Bai Lai let out a long sigh. So, you still. Bai Lai had his own difficulties. Bai Lai was afraid of Yuji. Yuji's enthusiasm was too much for Feng Shi. However, Yuji narrowed her eyes slightly. A charming smile suddenly appeared at the corner of her mouth. She knew Feng Shi's character too well. Her woman's intuition told her that there must be something wrong. There was no way Feng Shi would look like this. Bai Lai was just a facade. At that moment, Chen Fubai looked at Bai Lai coldly and then raised his broken skeleton hand. When he looked again, the skeletal hand was actually surrounded by white light. In an instant, the white bone regenerated with a cracking sound. Everything was as good as before. Chen Fubai was indeed not ordinary. Perfected soul transformation realm? 3 souls in one breath. Chen Fubai looked at Bai Lai. However, his tone was a little uncertain. That was because he really could not see through Bai Lai's realm. However, he could vaguely see that there were 2 souls in Bai Lai's body. One was a young man in a linen robe, and the other was a middle-aged cultivator in a white robe. However, the 2 souls did not really show up. 3 souls in one breath in the cave abode. Chen Fubai was right. Bai Lai indeed had 3 souls. In fact, the 3 people who drank with each other in the cave abode were the same person. Bai Lai had his own inner struggle about the 5 wheels, the sacred wheel ancestral behest, and his own choice. The conversation between the 3 people was just Bai Lai answering his own questions. Bai Lai, or Feng Shi, had always been a loner of the 5 wheels. He only had the wind wheel lineage. Bai Lai looked at Chen Fubai with a smile and said, "Who says that 3 souls in one breath must be at the perfected soul transformation realm?" Chen Fubai was stunned. For a moment, he did not understand what Bai Lai meant. Could it be that the 5 wheels still had some secret technique? As soon as Bai Lai appeared, all the soul transformation chi had been restrained. However, the entire 5 wheels immortal realm and the Slekton sect immortal realm were gradually calming down. Just now, the increasingly rapid ups and downs were slowing down. Guan Xiong looked at Bai Lai in the void, and could not help but sigh and mutter to himself. Bai Lai? Feng Shi? As expected, he lives up to his reputation. I'm ashamed. Because, with Guan Xiong's ability, Bai Lai could actually come and go as he pleased all these years, without the slightest flaw. Guan Xiong did not see through Bai Lai's foundation at all. Bai Lai, you actually cultivated the heart of the mundane world. Chen Fubai, you've lost this battle. Guan Xiong looked to the north, then at the Windwheel Mountain. There was no result at the Windwheel Mountain. The battle at the ancestral spirit peak should have lost its meaning the moment Bai Lai appeared. In the void above the ancestral spirit peak. White bone forbidden technique, deadwood undying technique. Bai Lai looked at Chen Fubai and shook his head with a sigh. A pity. A pity about what? Chen Fubai asked. A pity that you, Chen Fubai, cultivated a forbidden technique for 40,000 years. However, the outcome might not be what you think. Bai Lai's gaze suddenly turned sharp. Because what? Chen Fubai's single eye widened. He had given up on everything for 40,000 years. Even if Bai Lai was at the perfected soul transformation realm, he was willing to fight to the death. If he failed, he would die. Because... The corner of Bai Lai's mouth curled up. All of a sudden, his aura dispersed. Light flickered on both sides of Bai Lai. The plain-clothed young man and the middle-aged cultivator appeared at the same time. Because... I'm a tribulation god. Chapter 183. Divine Tribulation. Whoosh, the entire 5 Wheels Mountain was in an uproar. Bai Lai was actually a deity tribulation cultivator? Chi refinement, foundation establishment, core formation, nascent soul, soul transformation, deity tribulation, undying. These were the 7 great realms of cultivators. The higher one went, the greater the gap between the realms. The difference between soul dissolving and divine tribulation was a qualitative change. A divine tribulation realm cultivator was something that only appeared once in tens of thousands of years on the White Bone continent. Legend has it that the inheritor of Sien Su is a deity tribulation. However, its whereabouts were elusive, and it was really just a legend. It was rumored that the immortal temple in the White Bone southern region had a divine tribulation ancestor, but no one seemed to have seen him before. To the cultivators of the White Bone continent, a deity tribulation was a myth. That was an unreachable, or even an unattainable existence. On the ancestral spirit peak, Chun Fu Bai, crippled Longzi, Nyeshyang, and Yu Ji's expressions changed when they heard Bai Lai's words and saw the existence of the Holy Trinity. Feng Shi. Yu Ji's beautiful eyes were filled with affection. She looked at the plain-clothed youth. That was the junior brother Feng in her heart. Master. Blind's spiritual sense fell on the white-robed middle-aged cultivator. Because in his eyes that was his master. 3 souls in one breath was a divine ability of the great perfection of the soul transformation realm. A deity tribulation cultivator would naturally be able to use it. At that moment, Chun Fu Bai looked at the 3 cultivators before him with an ashen face. That was because he couldn't tell which one was Feng Shi's real body. It seemed that all of them were Feng Shi's real body, and their realms were all higher than his. Could it be the 3 divine tribulations? Which was the real body and which was the doppelganger? Chun Fu Bai could not tell at all, because it was also his first time seeing a deity tribulation cultivator. Back then, Sheng Luan was only at the peak late stage of the soul transformation realm. Invincible divine tribulation. This was the only understanding that the cultivators of the 5-wheel sect and the White Bone sect had about the divine tribulation. Chun Fu Bai could feel a tremendous pressure bearing down on him. The plain-clothed youngster, the white-robed cultivator and Bai Lai stood facing Chun Fu Bai in a triangular formation. At that moment, the aura emanating from their bodies made it difficult for Chun Fu Bai to advance. He felt that there were 3 mountains in front of him, 3 insurmountable mountains. At that moment, Chun Fu Bai lost all hope. It was impossible for him to defeat 5 wheels. The so-called recovery of the 5 wheels was simply a fool's dream. Nothing could be more devastating than this. Because the belief that a person had persisted in for 40,000 years had collapsed in an instant. Chun Fu Bai was half human and half ghost. It could be said that he was living an ignoble existence. It was to defeat 5 wheels. However, the appearance of Feng Shi, the 5th disciple of the Holy Wheel, shattered everything. He. Chun Fu Bai suddenly sneered and looked at Feng Shi's 3 clones with endless sorrow in his eyes. The Slekton sect is indeed inferior to the 5-wheel sect. I, Chun Fu Bai, have let down the ancestors of White Bone. With that, Chun Fu Bai raised his skeletal hand. In an instant, his 5 fingers turned into claws, and he actually grabbed at the side of his body. His immortal heart was still on the side of his physical body. Destroying one's immortal heart, destroying one's Tao and soul. Chun Fu Bai had chosen to commit suicide. This change was out of everyone's expectations. Chun Fu Bai was determined to die. Because the meaning of his life was no longer there. However, in front of the strongest, sometimes you don't even have the right to choose. Even if you want to die. Feng Shi's middle-aged clone moved slightly. Almost no one saw how he appeared in front of Chun Fu Bai, but everyone saw this scene in the end. The middle-aged Feng Shi pointed with one hand. Chun Fu Bai's skeletal arm was frozen in the void. At this moment, Bai Lai's body and the plain-clothed young man's body gradually disappeared in the void. The paper fan was already in the middle-aged cultivator's hand. Feng Shi looked at Chun Fu Bai with a faint smile and said, Chun Fu Bai, death is easy, but living is difficult. If you die, what will happen to the disciples who broke into 5 wheels? Do you want me to kill them all? To remove the Slekton sect from the White Bone mainland? At this moment, Chen Fubai was frozen in the void by Feng Shi, but he could still speak. Winner takes all. Do as you wish. Feng Shi fanned himself and shook his head with a bitter smile. Chen Fubai, you've perfected the soul transformation realm, but you still have such a temperament? What a waste of the Holy Wheel Ancestral Master's painstaking efforts. What? Chen Fubai narrowed his single eye. The Holy Wheel Ancestral Master had painstaking efforts? All I know is that the Holy Wheel Ancestral Master's hands are stained with the blood of his fellow disciples. Hearing that, Feng Shi sneered. Chen Fubai, you used to be the little junior brother of the Holy Wheel Ancestral Master. You should know what kind of person he is. Then, Feng Shi pointed a finger at the center of Chen Fubai's eyebrows. A beam of white light poured into him. It was a divine sense. Chen Fubai was slightly stunned. It was the Holy Wheel Ancestral Master's voice echoing. The voice was a little hoarse, as if he didn't have long to live, and his aura was weak. Don't ask about the past. Don't ask about the future of the 5 wheels. I have no regrets in my life when I kill for all living beings. What crime have I committed after 100,000 years of peace? My 5 disciples must leave the 5 wheels. If the soul transformation realm comes out, they can be killed. Every 30,000 years, no one will return. Those who meet Fubai are willing to be ghosts under the knife. Chen Fubai's expression changed slightly, but he didn't say anything. That's the Holy Wheel Ancestral behest. Although we don't fully understand its true meaning, you should at least understand it, Feng Shi said to Chen Fubai. I have no regrets in my life when I kill for all living beings. What crime have I committed after 100,000 years of peace? I don't understand the specific meaning of these 2 sentences either. But I think the Holy Wheel Ancestral Master must have had his reasons. Feng Shi frowned slightly. Feng Shi was good at divination and even had a supernatural ability. However, he didn't understand why the Holy Wheel Ancestral Master wanted the white bones to be stained with blood. Why did he want peace for all living beings? Chen Fubai didn't say anything. However, his mind was already shaken. The 5 wheels originated from the white bones. The Holy Wheel Ancestral Master had already explained this before he died, and he also told us to pay with blood. You're right. The root of the 5 wheels is the white bones. Feng Shi emphasized the last 8 words. The root of the 5 wheels was the white bones. Hearing that, the entire 5 wheels was in an uproar again. Everyone, including the blind Ancestral Master, was shocked. It seemed that what the Slekton sect said was true. Ha! Ha! Chen Fubai couldn't help but laugh. However, his laughter was full of sorrow and vicissitudes. He was about to cry. However, he had no tears left. After 40,000 years, he finally heard what he wanted to hear from one of the ancestral masters of the 5 wheels. Thank you. Chen Fubai smiled and bowed to Feng Shi solemnly. Our sects share the same root. Why bother torturing each other? Feng Shi heaved another long sigh. 40,000 years ago, the white bones was bathed in blood. 40,000 years later, the 5 wheels will be slaughtered. Every sip and every peck was predetermined. From now on, our sects don't owe each other anything. Daoist Chen, today's battle ends here. Do you have any objections? Feng Shi called Chen Fubai Daoist Chen. After all, a soul transformation realm cultivator should call a deity tribulation cultivator senior. Chen Fubai was taken aback. Obviously, he didn't expect Feng Shi to say that. He nodded at first, then shook his head. Daoist Chen, what else do you want? Feng Shi asked. I only want one thing. Chen Fubai looked at Feng Shi. What is it? Feng Shi asked. Chen Fubai bent his knees and knelt in front of Feng Shi in the air. All the cultivators were taken aback. By the divine tribulation. Chen Fubai said solemnly, Senior, you said that the root of the 5 wheels is the white bones. Our sects share the same root. Why bother torturing each other? This junior understands deeply. Chapter 184. Fu Bai's bow shook the two meridians. Even mortals in the secular world had their own dignity and pride, let alone a great perfection of the soul transformation realm who had lived for more than 40,000 years. At that moment, the entire Five Wheels mountain range was silent. Chen Fubai knelt in the void. The half-human white ghost's withered hair was flying wildly. In this life, he was willing to live and die for bones. Why would he hesitate to kneel? He didn't have much lifespan left. Since Feng Shi didn't want to kill again, Chen Fubai was willing to do the last thing for White Bone. The two sects shared the same root. However, they had suffered disastrous losses in this battle. Even though the soul transformation ancestor was still there, he was lacking in strength and suffered countless casualties. Uniting the two sects was the most rational choice. That way, they would be able to dominate the northern bone region and even the central region. With White Bones as his name, he worshipped soul transformation as his venerable self. This was a proposal that both sides could accept. In fact, Feng Shi was the one who had the final say in this matter. Because he was a divine tribulation. In this world, the strong were revered. The might of the divine tribulation was enough to suppress everything. None of the two sects dared to disobey. In fact, Feng Shi was thinking the same thing as Chen Fubai. However, different tasks required different people to handle. Otherwise, Feng Shi could have let Chen Fubai commit suicide just now. Although Feng Shi was a god tribulation, he still had 3 senior brothers and senior sisters. Feng Shi looked at crippled Longzi. Ken Longzi nodded and sighed. If that's the case, it's considered perfect. Feng Shi looked at Niexiang. Niexiang shook his head and smiled bitterly. I, Niexiang, have been pursuing the God's tribulation all my life. Only now do I know the power of the God's tribulation. If it was 10,000 years ago, I, Niexiang, would definitely be unwilling. Haha, but now, I'm a person with less than 100 days of lifespan. What kind of trouble can I stir up? Feng Shi then looked at Yuji. Yuji was flirtatious and charming, but when Feng Shi looked at her, her cheeks flushed. That was definitely not a seduction technique, but a bashfulness born from love. Feng Shi had always made her heart race. Junior brother Feng, whatever you say, it is. That was a very feminine reply. Feng Shi smiled. Such a result was, of course, the best. Thus, he helped Chen Fubai up with both hands. Fellow cultivator Chen, as you wish. Whoosh, at that moment, the entire Five Wheels mountain was in an uproar again. Because this result was too sudden. One must know that not every cultivator had the layout and realm of the soul transformation realm. Not every disciple knew what the sacred wheel ancestral behest was. Whether it was the Five Wheels or the Slekton sect, many cultivators still needed some time to accept this matter. Of course, no one was willing to die. No more killing. It would always be the will of the people and the path of good. Therefore, there would always be many problems, but they could all be understood and forgiven. Fellow Taoist blind. Fellow Taoist azure-robed. The two nascent soul patriarchs bowed to each other. Chief Yang. Sect leader Bai Zongchen and Yang Tianshao sheathed their swords and smiled faintly. Things in the world were often like this. Love and hate, gratitude and resentment, ambition and ambition, they might be remembered for thousands of years, but they could also vanish in an instant. At this moment, Yang Tianshao turned to look at Yin Zhongmo, and Yin Zhongmo looked back at him at the same time. The two of them could understand each other the best. Open strife and veiled strife for hundreds of years. He racked his brains for every possible scheme. But, so what? Bai Lai was a deity tribulation. In his eyes, everything must be fragile, childish, and laughable. What could escape Bai Lai's eyes in the Five Wheels' 10,000 years of history? Bai Lai only saw through it, but did not say it out loud. because sometimes God was unwilling to interfere in the fighting of mortals. Once God descended to the human world, everything would exist according to God's will, because He was God. Brother Yang, after surviving a calamity, would you like to have a drink? Een Zongmo smiled. Ha! Chief Een, of course we have to keep our word. Let's drink and play chess. We won't leave until we're drunk. Yang Tianxiao laughed. Everything in the past was erased. The 5 wheels of white bones, the war had ended, and their hearts had returned to their root. This was a blessing. However, at this moment, an earth-shattering sound came from the direction of Windwheel Mountain. Everyone was taken aback. Just as one wave subsided, another wave arose. Boom, boom, the green fog above the Windwheel Mountain suddenly dispersed. The wind swept away the clouds, and the world returned. In fact, everything had happened almost at the same time since the nascent Soul Realm battle on the ancestral Spirit Peak. Everything happened in an extremely short period of time. Mu Jinghong had already started to change not long after entering the Azure Mist Array. However, no one could see what was going on inside because of the fog. Then, the fog dissipated. A tall and slender woman was actually standing outside the Windwheel Mountain. She had red hair and a red dress like a demon. Under her feet, there was a red fog like a blood tide. A wave of mysterious aura spread out. It was filled with bloodthirst and demonic intent. Mu Jinghong. At that moment, everyone's expression changed. No one had seen Mu Jinghong like that. Ha! Gigi. Mu Jinghong suddenly laughed. Her red hair flew in the wind and her blood energy surged. Who said that? Eternal life? Who lied to us? Eternal life. Who said that? Eternal life? Who lied to us? Eternal life. Mu Jinghong had already gone mad. However, there was endless sorrow in her laughter. No one knew how many lives and how many reincarnations she had gone through to experience her pain and suffering. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, emptiness to emptiness, nothingness to nothingness. 10,000 years of admiring the mortal world, 1 lifetime of white bones. Ha ha, sob, ha ha. Her laughter was like crying, the sorrow of the ages. At that moment, Mu Jinghong was like a ghost, but it seemed that everyone was infected. A glint of pain flashed in Feng Shi's eyes. Mu Jinghong's performance had exceeded his expectations. Feng Shi knew the pain of a person with a soul. And Mu Jinghong wasn't just a person with a soul. Guan Xiong frowned in the sky. Mu Jinghong, who exactly are you? How can your pain reach the sky? The laughter echoed and shook the entire 5 paths immortal realm. At that moment, even the 2 grand cultivators of the Bone Mainland and the southern region couldn't help but look in the direction of the 5 paths immortal realm. The Bone Mainland. No one could say for sure if that space belonged to the White Bone Continent or not. A girl in a white outfit was sitting on a purple lotus platform. Her brows were slightly furrowed, but there was a sly look in her eyes. Could it be that little fatty mess things up? Hee, master will definitely skin him alive. But whose laughter is that? Why is it so sad? It's a person with a soul. The southernmost part of the Bone Mainland. There was an old temple and a meditation room. A young monk was sitting on a tattered praying mat. The monk's expression was indifferent, but his eyes reflected everything in the 5 paths immortal realm. Amit Ba. The young monk didn't open his mouth, but he was chanting in his heart. The immortal temple was filled with Buddhism. The mundane past was just an old dream. He had already distanced himself from the mundane world and didn't care about anything. 5 paths immortal realm, Windwheel Mountain. Mu Jinghong floated in the air like a demon. The 9th peak of the Windwheel Mountain, inside the cosmic cave. Sumo was sitting with her legs crossed. That was the position she had been in ever since she was brought in by the green mist array. Sumo felt a bit relaxed. Chapter 185. Laughing and scolding, loving and hating. Mu Jinghong's behavior outside the Windwheel Mountain affected Sumo's soul. However, Sumo felt that she had no choice. He was in the array. Boom, rumble, it was an earth-shattering sound. The Windwheel 9 peaks were actually moving. It was truly moving. The entire mountain was moving. The entire Windwheel Mountain was moving, except for the Windwheel 9th peak. The Windwheel 9th peak was the center of the other 8 peaks. With the 9th peak as the center, it had a radius of 700 kilometers. The other 8 peaks had returned to a circular orbit. This was what Sumo had discovered when she first entered the Windwheel Mountain. The arrangement of the peaks was very strange. There was a hidden array, which meant it was a grand array. Whoosh, boom, boom. At this moment, every peak of the Windwheel Mountain was rotating on its own. Each peak had an earth-shattering aura. That aura was very special, because it was not an aura that should exist in the White Bone mainland. The 9 peaks were all rotating on their own. A spectacle that had not been seen for thousands of years appeared in the 5 Paths Immortal Domain. The entire Windwheel Mountain seemed to have changed into another world. It was incompatible with the entire 5 Paths Immortal Domain. Moving mountains and moving seas was definitely an earth-shattering feat. The Windwheel Mountain was a world of its own. The soul transformation realm experts standing in the void of the 5 paths could not help but be shocked. They could also move mountains and seas, but the nature was different. Yang Tianxiao and Yin Zhongmo were even more dumbfounded. Windwheel 9 rotations. Was that the legendary Windwheel 9 rotations? What was the Windwheel lineage doing? The battle in the 5 Paths and White Bone mainland had stopped. Did the Windwheel lineage still want to overturn the universe? At this moment, in the entire void, only Feng Shi knew what the Windwheel lineage was doing. However, Feng Shi did not move. If the deity Tribulation did not move, no one dared to move. Windwheel 9 rotations. Guan Xiong sighed in the void. So the Windwheel lineage is not made up of soulless people? Where did they come from? Then, Guan Xiong looked at the entire 5 Paths Immortal Domain and White Bone Immortal Domain. At this moment, perhaps it was because of the Windwheel earthquake. The feeling of ups and downs, which had already calmed down, came again. In the Slekton sect, apart from the White Eye Peak and the White Eye Peak, the White Nose Peak was also giving off a strange aura. The Slekton sect was in a state of panic. Guan Xiong flipped his hand, revealing 7 black and white chess pieces in his hand. Guan Xiong looked at the chess pieces in his hand and smiled helplessly. This was the most powerful magical treasure he had. The Lord told me that everything is like a game of chess. It all depends on who is playing. Looks like I'll have to use these chess pieces today. Guan Xiong seemed very reluctant. Looking again, the 9 peaks of the wind wheel really spun 9 times. Then, the 9 peaks simultaneously emitted an endless green radiance. 9 figures gradually appeared at the top of the 9 peak. Each of the 9 disciples of Windmill occupied a peak. They sat cross-legged on their respective peak. He sat down on a ball of green energy that looked like a praying mat. On the 9 peaks, only Sumo was looking around blankly. Because when he was originally in his cave abode, he was suddenly enveloped by a layer of green smoke and floated to the top of the 9th summit. Sumo did not know anything and looked around. On the first summit, eldest senior brother was dressed in plain clothes and looked like an old farmer. On the second summit, second senior brother Du Shuxing was dressed in a snow-white robe. A folding fan was floating in front of him. On the third peak, the third senior brother, Hua Kei, was dressed in black, as usual. On the fourth summit, there was only a soul figure. It was a thin figure with a long sword on his back. The sword tassel was swaying, but the cultivator's face could not be seen clearly. Fourth senior brother? Sumo was startled. Fourth senior brother Windmill was just a soul? No wonder she had never seen him before. Fourth senior Windmill, the soul of a nascent soul. At that moment, everyone in the 5 wheels was shocked. Fourth senior Windmill was a nascent soul cultivator? Moreover, he existed in the form of a living soul. Who said that fourth senior windmill was dead? Fourth senior brother was the secret of windmill. On the fifth peak, fifth senior brother Su Yike. 3 ancient coins formed a triangular shape in front of him, emitting an ancient light. On the sixth peak, sixth senior brother Lu Tianzhan. His interspatial pouch was gone. On the seventh peak, seventh senior sister Bai Yifeng was dressed in a dreamy blue dress. However, at that moment, Bai Yifeng was not as ugly as she was now. On the seventh peak, a peerless beauty sat with her legs crossed. Her beauty was out of this world. So that was seventh senior sister's original appearance. On the eighth peak, eighth senior brother Han Tian looked like a giant even though he was sitting with his legs crossed. At that moment, the 8 disciples of Windmill had their eyes closed. Their hands were all forming strange hand seals. Each of them was emitting a strange glow. What are they doing? Second senior brother, seventh senior sister. Suma wanted to shout, but she could not make a sound. Eldest senior brother, fifth senior brother. Sumo wanted to struggle, but it was useless. At the same time, Sumo also saw Mu Jinghong. Is that senior sister Mu? Sumo was extremely shocked. Her red dress was like a demon, and she was as strange as a demon. At that moment, Mu Jinghong's head was lowered as if she was crying. The blood under her feet was surging like a surging cloud. However, Mu Jinghong actually had a hint of calmness and calmness. It seemed like the power of the windmill 9 rotations had temporarily suppressed Mu Jinghong's rage. Also, Mu Jinghong seemed to have passed through the illusion. However, she could not completely calm herself down. Senior sister Mu, however, Sumo was like a bird trapped in a cage, unable to escape. At that moment, all the disciples of Windmill slowly opened their eyes. Everyone looked at Su Mo with warm smiles on their faces. Little junior brother. Second senior brother's voice could be heard. Little junior brother. Seventh senior sister's voice could be heard. Little junior brother. Fifth senior brother's voice could be heard. At that moment, everyone in Windmill called him little junior brother, including fourth senior brother, who only had a soul left. Senior brothers and sisters. Sumo shouted. At that moment, the Windmill disciples seemed to have heard Sumo's voice too. Little junior brother, don't be impatient. Seventh senior sister said gently. You have entered the Windmill sect, so you are a Windmill person. Today we are going to give you an opportunity. Seventh senior sister? Sumo did not understand. Seventh senior sister looked at Sumo as if she was looking at a child, and did not speak. Little junior brother, we have to remember this lifetime of fate. Second senior brother said with a smile, Windmill, for tens of thousands of years, we have been waiting for you or someone like you to appear. Waiting for me? Sumo did not understand second senior brother's words at all. Little junior brother, thank you for the foundation breaking pill. Although I don't need it, sixth senior brother Lu Tianzhan said with a smile. He did not look like the wretched person he used to be. Little junior brother, I will remember you. Eighth senior brother Han Tian was actually about to cry. He would not say anything else. Little junior brother, do you still remember what I said? Fifth senior brother Su Yike said with a smile. I once said that all our abilities will belong to you in the future. Sumo remembered that sentence. It was when he had just entered the Windmill sect. Little junior brother, do you still remember? Bai Yifeng had a kind smile on her beautiful face. Windmill is home. You must remember this sentence. We will wait for you at home. Remember the fate of this lifetime, be grateful for the kindness of this lifetime. In this world, there will always be people who will leave us and go to another world. At that moment, we can only bear it. At that moment, Sumo was extremely flustered. His soul seemed to have been sucked out by something. Senior brothers, seventh senior sister, Sumo shouted loudly. However, no one responded to him. Chapter 186. whoosh, windwheel empowerment. The 9 peaks of the windwheel spun at the same time. Dazzling lights shot up from each of the 8 peaks. The light came from the Baihui acupoint on the top of the 8 suns of the windwheel. The light wasn't any weaker than the soul transformation light just now. 8 soul transformation lights? That's impossible. However, it was indeed a light that shot into the sky with a trace of soul spirit. In fact, the native cultivators of the Bone continent didn't have that kind of soul spirit. Those who had white bones were all soulless people. The windwheel empowerment. Guan Xiong's expression changed. Hardship cultivation, bloodline cultivation, empowerment, and awakening were the 4 main paths of cultivation. Most cultivators focused on tempering their qi. Bloodline inheritance required special constitutions. In the past, second senior brother had also taught Su Mo about bloodline cultivation. However, second senior brother had deliberately concealed some of the essence for today. At that time, second senior brother said that there were 2 possibilities of bloodline cultivation. One was bloodline cultivation, which required one to have a bloodline talent. Families were born with a certain skill that could only be activated at a specific time. The other was bloodline cultivation, which was passed down from generation to generation. For every person who inherited it, one person would die. This kind of bloodline cultivation could almost completely inherit the inheritor's ability. In fact, the first was true bloodline cultivation. The so-called second type of bloodline cultivation was actually empowerment. However, Guan Xiong knew the empowerment method. It was an absolute method that was even better than bloodline cultivation to a certain extent. However, the conditions for empowerment were extremely strict. If one wasn't careful, both the inheritor and the inheritor would be destroyed. The windwheel lineage actually wanted to carry out the empowerment for Su Mo. This scene caused Guan Xiong to be extremely shocked. Meanwhile, Feng Shi had a complicated expression as he watched. The windwheel shouldn't belong to the 5 wheels. They were finally going home. Whoosh, whoosh, the entire windwheel mountain shook, and a strong wind rose. 8 beams of light shot into the sky and gathered in one spot, covering the sky and earth. That spot was the peak of the windwheel 9th peak. At that moment, everyone who witnessed the empowerment couldn't help but be shocked. Sumo looked up. She felt that there was a blue world hanging above her head. There seemed to be 8 shining stars in that world. At that moment, Sumo had a very bad feeling. His 8 senior brothers and sisters seemed to be leaving him. The other cultivators looked on in astonishment. The Enlightenment technique. It was a technique that many low-level cultivators had never even heard of. That was truly the moment to witness a miracle. The light shot up into the sky and then fell straight down. Of course, their target was Sumo. Bang! At this moment, Sumo felt that the green world was covering the sky. In front of Sumo's eyes, there was a misty green light. Then, the 8 stars fell straight down. Sumo slowly closed her eyes. Boom boom, every star was a legacy. They poured down from Sumo's Baihui acupoint. That inheritance actually contained many techniques. Then, there was an endless amount of spiritual qi, among which there was an extremely special aura. A star fell, and a huge wave rose in Sumo's dansi. The white skeleton that was originally sitting down was instantly plated with a layer of green light. The waves rolled and the dansi expanded. At that moment, Sumo's dansi expanded at an exponential rate. Qi of core formation surged like a tornado, filling the sky. Sumo's cultivation level rose rapidly. Because it was enlightenment. All the power of the windwheel lineage would become Sumo's power and fuse into his body. As for what cultivation level the windwheel lineage was at, no one could say for sure. It was the mystery of the 5 wheels. The second star fell, and the white skeleton was plated with a layer of blue light. At that moment, the original appearance of the skeleton immortal root could not be seen, because it was completely covered by the blue light. On the Nine Dragons Immortal platform, there was a blue humanoid sitting cross-legged. Boom, hua! The third star, the fourth star, the stars fell straight down, as if falling into the sea. Each star was an inheritance. At that moment, countless spells had been fused into Sumo's sea of consciousness. They were the essence of the Windwheel lineage. Those spells flowed into her sea of consciousness. In the eyes of others, Sumo was sitting cross-legged on the ninth peak of the Windwheel mountain, his long hair flying in the wind. Above his head, there were 8 layers of green energy that kept pouring into him. The green aura around Sumo's body revolved in waves. He seemed to be receiving a special kind of baptism. Hu Hua Feng Shi moved. The 3 clones formed a triangular formation and stood outside the Windwheel lineage. The chi of the divine tribulation dispersed slightly. He was actually protecting the Windwheel with his Dharma blessing. Mu Jinghong, who was standing opposite the ninth peak, was watching everything that was happening in front of him in a daze. Her eyes seemed a bit empty and complicated. Her red dress and red hair did not fade. However, the red tide under her feet subsided slightly. At that moment, no one knew if Mu Jinghong had completely understood or if he was still immersed in the illusion. Everyone present was astonished by this sudden change. However, no one dared to interrupt him. They only waited in silence. In the immortal temple in the southern region of Bones, the young monk sighed lightly when he saw this scene, and then he slowly closed his eyes. There were too many secrets on the Bones. Since he wanted to put an end to everything, he didn't mind watching the blessing. In an ethereal place in the middle region of Bones, the girl in white seemed to be deep in thought. The Windwheel blessing? She should go back and tell her master about this, because she seemed to have seen a ray of reincarnation light in this spectacle. Thinking of that, the purple lotus platform under the girl in white suddenly emitted light. The girl in white disappeared in the ethereal place. The Windwheel mountain. There was only one ray of blue light left above Sumo's head. On the other 8 peaks, the Windwheel 8 suns were still sitting cross-legged. From the outside, they didn't seem to have changed at all. However, the blue light above their heads was no longer emitting. Many spells had appeared in Sumo's mind. Sumo's core sea had become boundless. The everlasting art had been activated to the extreme, but it seemed to be unable to completely dissolve the power brought by the blessing. On the Nine Dragons deity platform, the white skeleton gradually revealed its original appearance. However, the entire deity base of the white skeleton was emitting a faint blue light. Not only that, the Nine Dragons deity platform was also covered in a layer of blue light. They were all injected with a new aura. Boom! Hua! In Sumo's world, the last star fell. Then, Sumo felt a ray of light above her head. It seemed to be a white hole, but she didn't know where it led to. Sumo felt her cultivation level soar. The energy of the core formation became the energy of the nascent soul, and the energy of the nascent soul became the energy of the soul transformation. Core formation, nascent soul, soul transformation. It was as if she had skipped a level. Sumo's aura instantly shook the heavens. This caused everyone present to be stunned. Especially the nascent soul grand cultivators and the soul transformation ancestral master. From core formation to soul transformation. What did that mean? Whoosh. Chapter 187. The aura of soul dissolving suddenly shot into the sky. However, there was an even more strange aura on the ninth peak of the Windwheel mountain. Because, after all the green light poured into the top of Sumo's head, a bright white hole had appeared in the void. The sound of wind suddenly echoed throughout the entire Windwheel mountain range. It seemed to be the sound of wind from ancient times. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The wind howled, but only the sound could be heard, not the shape. Although Sumo had opened her eyes, she couldn't move her body for the time being. For Sumo, the empowerment seemed to have yet to be completed. However, when all the azure light disappeared, the Windwheel 8 opened their eyes again. However, there was a green glow in their eyes, and they no longer had the color of the past. Soul Shell. Guan Xiong frowned slightly in the air. Meanwhile, Feng Shi's 3 clones looked at the peaks of the Windwheel Mountain range and suddenly sang a sorrowful song. The wind swirls around the 5 wheels, majestic and mighty. Wine, laughter, cursing, madness, only I have a soul. In the Bone Sect, the sky collapsed and the earth caved in. Every 10,000 years, the Windwheel 9 rotations overturn the universe. This was the crazy divination song left behind by the Windwheel sect. Feng Shi's song was full of heroism and desolation. He had written the song, so he knew the meaning of the song better than anyone else. That's right. The wind swirls around the 5 wheels, majestic and mighty. The windwheel is above the 5 wheels. Madness, only I have a soul. Everyone in the Windwheel sect had a soul. The crazy divination song had already explained everything. Whoosh, the Windwheel 8 suddenly flew up. They were all singing the crazy divination song. They were sending him off. At that moment, heaven and earth echoed in unison. However, when the crazy divination song started, Mu Jinghong, who was in front of the 9th peak, slowly raised her head. The windwheel is supreme? Only I have a soul? Haha, the windwheel is nothing. Mu Jinghong was quiet for a long time. It was hard to tell if she was consciously waiting for the windwheel empowerment to end. Now, the windwheel empowerment was complete. Murderous intent appeared on Mu Jinghong's face again. The blood tide beneath her feet began to surge again. The expressions of the cultivators from the 5 wheels and white bones sects changed. The aura emitted by Mu Jinghong was simply too terrifying. Outside the Windwheel Mountain, Bai Lai, the plain-clothed young man, and the middle-aged cultivator were all frowning. Feng Shi was also worried that his deduction was wrong. Mu Jinghong was currently the biggest variable, because no one could control her. Woohoo walala, the sound of the wind on Windwheel Mountain grew louder and louder. Mu Jinghong's red clothes and blood-red hair fluttered in the wind. Windwheel faction, don't even think about living. Mu Jinghong's voice was cold as he formed a seal in the air. Looking again, 17 black shadows suddenly appeared within the Windwheel Mountain. They were precisely the 17 Ink Soul Death Warriors that had disappeared all this while. No one knew why they had disappeared just now. But at this moment, they had all turned into black shadows. They were Mu Jinghong's swords and guardians. Soul kill. Mu Jinghong formed a seal with his hands. The 17 black shadows turned into 17 rays of soul light and went straight for the Windwheel 8 suns. At the same time, the Windwheel 8 suns also flew up from their respective peaks and rushed toward Mu Jinghong. However, the Windwheel 8 suns did not say a word. They had only sung the crazy divination song just now. There was only Qing Hui in their eyes, nothing else. They seemed to have turned into puppets. However, Sumo could not see any of this. Senior brother, senior sister, Sumo shouted. He knew that Mu Jinghong would not show mercy. Mu Jinghong's purpose in coming to the Windwheel 8 suns was to kill them. He had seen Mu Jinghong's extreme side before. At this moment, Sumo had no idea that the battle between the 5 wheels and white bones had already ended. Only the Windwheel 8 suns were not calm. However, the Windwheel 8 suns would not listen to his call, and Mu Jinghong would certainly not listen to Sumo. Chi chi chi. The 17 rays of soul light could not stop the Windwheel 8 suns. Miraculously, the Windwheel 8 suns passed through all the soul lights and went straight for Mu Jinghong. Each of them held a ray of green light that looked like an immortal sword. They attacked Mu Jinghong from 8 different directions. Fast, accurate, and ruthless. No one knew the cultivation level of the Windwheel multiple figures, because it was impossible to see them. Could they kill Mu Jinghong? However, that was the last thing the 8 brothers of the Windmill sect could do for Sumo. Mu Jinghong seemed to have expected this. Just as the 8 sons of Feng Luan were about to reach her, the corners of Mu Jinghong's mouth actually curled up into a smile, and then he said in a light voice, "Thank you, everyone. I know you've already gone home. Within the Windwheel Mountain, only Mu Jinghong and the 8 sons of Windwheel could hear this. Of course, Sumo couldn't hear him. The people outside the Windwheel Mountain could not hear it either. Only Feng Shi and the other 2 sighed slightly. Because Feng Shi had made the right bet. In fact, Mu Jinghong had not lost his last shred of rationality. She knew what she was doing. However, everyone saw Mu Jinghong flick his sleeves like a demon. The blood tide under her feet rose abruptly as she cast the spell. 1,000 layers, and the waves were 10,000 feet high. A strange black talisman appeared between Mu Jinghong's eyebrows again. Red dust. Destroy. Mu Jinghong yelled and swept up the endless red dust again. This was the same move she had used to kill the 7 Earth Wheel Realm Core Formation cultivators. Boundless red dust, undefeatable in the world. Whoosh, rustle, the red sand swept across the entire Windwheel Mountain range like a curtain. It was an indiscriminate attack. However, none of the red sand swept toward the 9th peak, nor did it fly more than 700 miles away from the Windwheel Mountain. Wherever the red sand passed, no life was spared, not even a blade of grass or a tree. That scene was the nightmare of all cultivators. Even Feng Shi couldn't help but frown. What kind of spell was that? The faces of Chen Fubai, crippled Longzi, Niexiang, and Yu Ji, the 4 soul transformation realm grand cultivators, twitched. That was because the entire 8 peaks of the Windwheel Mountain had been razed to the ground. Wherever the red sand passed, everything died. It could be said that other than the 9th peak of the Windwheel Mountain, which Sumo was guarding, Mu Jinghong had made the entire Windwheel Mountain range disappear without a trace. Of course, the 8 windwheels had already melted into the red sand. Ha ha ha, GGG. Mu Jinghong laughed in the red sand, her red hair flying wildly as if she had gone crazy again. At this moment, no one dared to make a sound. Silence. Not only was there fear, but there was also endless shock. At that moment, apart from Mu Jinghong's laughter, the entire 5 Wheels Mountain was dead silent. That was because that scene was too bloody and terrifying. Everyone wondered if Mu Jinghong could raise the entire 5 Wheels Immortal Realm or even the Bone Mainland if she wanted to. That was because the attack power of the red sand was definitely not limited to 700 miles. They surrounded the Windwheel Mountain like a ball of wind, and Mu Jinghong had been controlling them. She only wanted to destroy the Windwheel Mountain. Otherwise, she could have made the red sand scatter. Silence. Red sand. Everyone felt the call of death. Mu Jinghong was a red devil. However, all of a sudden, a loud shout broke the silence. Mu Jinghong, I'm going to kill you! Chapter 188. The red robe was dreamy, the green robe illusory. When Sumo stood up from the 9th peak of Windmill, everyone in 5 Wheels Mountain saw the confrontation between red dust and green mang. Now, only the 9th peak was left within a 700-li radius of Windmill. It was a kind of loneliness and a kind of tragedy. Sumo was dressed in green robes, great perfection of soul transformation. At this time, his aura was completely different from Sumo. Green light was like immortal chi, his eyes filled with divine light. There was wind in the air, and his robe fluttered. That was a soul transformation almighty. But Sumo looked at Mu Jinghong, his eyes full of sorrow, but more than that, there was coldness and determination. Mu Jinghong. Sumo enunciated each word. Why must you do this? Sumo's heart was bleeding. Why did Mu Jinghong have to destroy Windmill? And he was merciless. Ha ha. Sumo, why must you do this? Mu Jinghong smiled coldly at Sumo. Isn't Windmill the most important to you? Now that I've killed them, what can you do? Ah. Your 7th senior sister is as beautiful as a flower. Ha ha. Mu Jinghong's eyes glowed with red light, looking very demonic. I will destroy everything you like, everything you love. Mu Jinghong smiled wickedly. I am a white bone dark seed and a white bone witch. Are you satisfied with this answer? I, Sumo, have never harmed anyone. Sumo's tone was cold and sorrowful. I, Sumo, have been grateful. I did not want to kill, but if I did not kill, someone would kill me. What wrong did Windmill do? You must destroy my bloodline. Why did our past friendship fade? Sumo's voice trembled slightly, but he grabbed at the air with one hand. Zzzt zzzt. Green lightning appeared in the air. That broken bamboo pole was already in Sumo's hand. At this time, the bamboo pole glowed brightly, the green light dazzling. That was definitely a divine weapon. What did Windmill do wrong? Mu Jinghong couldn't help but laugh coldly. There's no right or wrong in this world. As long as it didn't go against his conscience. If I want it, I will go. When I, Mu Jinghong, do things, I don't care about right and wrong. Love comes and goes, why ask about the past? If you don't ask about right and wrong, why ask about the past? Sumo smiled sadly. His hand that was holding the bamboo pole trembled as he pointed it at Mu Jinghong. It was a process of becoming firm again. Sumo's heart was gradually turning cold. Kill! Suemo roared fiercely. He gave himself one last stab of pain and courage. The bamboo pole was like a dragon, and the body was like an arrow. The two merged into one and charged straight at Mu Jinghong. The power of soul dissolving suddenly spread out. Chi, Sumo was like a long sword that could split the sky. A path of blood was cut open in the vast expanse of red sand. The red sand dispersed like a curtain, seemingly ineffective against Sumo. The scene shocked all the cultivators. Feng Shi and the other two bodies frowned. After all, they might not be able to break through the strange red sand. Guan Xiong froze in the air as well. Sumo could break through the invincible red sand. Mu Jinghong was probably the only one who smiled bitterly. Her red sand was indeed ineffective against Sumo. Only she knew why. However, her eyes suddenly turned cold. Boom! The red sand was ineffective, but Mu Jinghong still had a shocking technique. He raised his arms and instantly formed a circle. Sumo flew over, but she was suddenly blocked 300 feet away from Mu Jinghong. Mu Jinghong formed a hand seal, and a red shield that was dozens of feet tall appeared in the air. Boom, bang! The broken bamboo pole directly pierced the blood shield. Red light spilled and green light scattered. There was a loud noise. However, Sumo couldn't go any further. Mu Jinghong's lips curled up. However, Sumo wasn't the old Sumo anymore. He had thousands of Dao techniques in his mind. Although he hadn't completely merged them, he was different from before. Break! Sumo quickly formed a hand seal. The broken bamboo pole suddenly emitted a green light that was like an umbrella, spreading outwards. Boom! It was like a battle between two opposing factions. Sumo's immortal art was endless. Waves surged in the pill sea. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The bamboo pole kept vibrating and emitting dragon roars. Boom, crack. Sumo suddenly straightened the pole. Mu Jinghong's shield was broken by Sumo. Mu Jinghong's eyes flashed with surprise. Whoosh, whoosh. At the same time, Sumo thought of something. A clone appeared on each side of her body. They went around the shield and went toward Mu Jinghong. They were two identical Sumo clones. Oh? Hee. Mu Jinghong seemed to have forgotten that Sumo had reached great perfection soul transformation realm and could form 3 souls at once. However, how could the 2 souls break through Mu Jinghong's defense? Mu Jinghong didn't take them seriously at all. Whoosh, the red sand rolled up. Bang, bang, the 2 souls were hidden by Mu Jinghong's red sand. That was because they weren't their true bodies. However, they turned into light and returned to their true bodies. It seemed that Sumo's 2 souls were completely different from Feng Shi's clones. Sumo raised an eyebrow and activated her soul transformation power again. Golden light shone from Sumo's body as if she was possessed by a golden dragon. At the same time, a golden light dragon floated above Sumo's head. The golden light dragon bared its fangs and claws and roared at the sky. Boom! Sumo waved an arm. A golden dragon charged toward Mu Jinghong in the air. Sacred Ancestor Golden Dragon Fist. Many almighties of the 5 wheels recognized this secret technique. However, they hadn't seen the sacred wheel Golden Dragon Fist from a soul transformation almighty in a long time. At that moment, Sumo seemed to be possessed by the sacred wheel ancestral master. It was a technique from 8th senior brother Han Tian. The golden dragon roared and danced in the sky with unstoppable momentum. Mu Jinghong narrowed his eyes. That technique came from Han Tian, but Sumo's sacred wheel Golden Dragon Fist was not comparable to Han Tian's fist. Sumo's fist was not at its peak, but it was enough to kill a soul transformation realm cultivator. Sumo not bad, Mu Jinghong thought. Since you've seen my demon-like appearance, let me be your whetstone for the last time. Whoosh, whoosh, a blood tide surged under Mu Jinghong's feet. The blood tide was different from the red sand. Mu Jinghong waved one hand. A blood tide surged and turned into a giant dragon that met Sumo's golden dragon. Boom, crack, bang. If Feng Shi hadn't been controlling the Windwheel Mountain, the soul transformation chi would have leaked. Within 350 kilometers of Windwheel Mountain, the golden red light scattered like thousands of shooting stars. This time, the two were evenly matched. Mu Jinghong looked at Sumo and sneered. Sumo, your sacred ancestor Golden Dragon Fist can't hurt me at all. What other techniques do you have? Just use them, because I won't show mercy anymore. If you don't ask about the past, why show mercy? Sumo sneered. Good. Then, Mu Jinghong formed a seal with his hands, and his sleeves fluttered. Blood Soul Transformation! Mu Jinghong yelled. Looking again, the meteors from the blood tide had actually started to gather together. Whoosh, whoosh, one by one, blood-red figures appeared in the void. 1 streak, 2 streaks, 3 streaks. There were 17 of them in total. That was the number of inky soul death warriors that Mu Jinghong had. At this time, 17 blood souls in red stood in the air. Every red-clothed blood soul emitted a bloody aura. Sumo stood in the air and watched everything coldly. He had techniques in his mind, but they were not enough to fight against Mu Jinghong. Sumo looked at Mu Jinghong for the last time, and the sadness in her eyes gradually faded. Since she had cut off the kindness, why should she show mercy? Sumo wanted to take revenge for the Windwheel clan. Chapter 189. Swish. As soon as the ancient mortal fan appeared, it set off a black light, but Sumo didn't open it right away. At the same time, Sumo thought of something. He patted his storage pouch, and the ragged bag was tossed into the air. Whoosh, whoo, then, the ragged bag opened. Whoosh, whoosh, the 17 white skeletons inside flew out. In an instant, the entire Windwheel Mountain area was filled with a terrible and ominous aura. The sky changed color, and the wind and clouds surged. Sumo had underestimated the power of the skeletons. It was the aura of Silent Death Valley. In an instant, the red sand converged and quickly retreated. The 17 blood souls in red shivered and were about to scatter. Outside Windwheel Mountain, Feng Shi's 3 clones changed their expressions. Bai Lai's face was pale, and the plain-clothed young man looked shocked. The middle-aged cultivator made a hand seal. Whoosh, the 3 soul clones merged into one again. Otherwise, Feng Shi wouldn't have been able to resist the terrible and ominous aura. After the 3 souls merged into one, Feng Shi's face darkened. Gods came to bury, and immortals returned to silence. It was a power that even divine tribulations couldn't resist. Silent death, immortal bones. Guan Xiong was surprised again. Guan Xiong had been surprised by many things in today's battle. Although he hadn't been to Silent Death Valley before, he knew some of the legends there. At the same time, he sensed the power of the same origin. Sumo could control the power of Silent Death Valley? One skeleton, one immortal suppresses the heavens. Guan Xiong murmured to himself. It was a phrase he had heard from his master. Silent Death Valley was also a forbidden area for Guan Xiong. But what was going on with Sumo? Could he have entered Silent Death Valley? That was unbelievable. Besides, not only had Sumo gone in, but he had also brought out the skeletons inside. Sumo didn't expect that just summoning those skeletons together would have such a huge impact. It was beyond his expectations. In fact, he should have known that Silent Death Valley was a place where divine tribulations stop. How could the skeletons there be ordinary in the outside world? The moment those skeletons appeared, Sumo's aura instantly suppressed Mu Jinghong. However, at this moment, he couldn't care less. Skeleton technique. Sumo made a hand seal. Ka. Among the 17 skeletons, the first 8 moved slightly. For Sumo, this was already a huge improvement. However, Sumo was still unable to control them freely. Naturally, there was no time for him to ponder and train hard. Mu Jinghong looked at Sumo and the skeletons without moving. Sumo, very good. Mu Jinghong thought to himself. At the same time, she raised her right hand again. That mystical black longsword slowly emerged from his sleeve again. At the same time, Mu Jinghong slapped his storage pouch. A phoenix cry rang out. The black feather god Hong also rushed into the sky. However, at that moment its entire body glowed red like a phoenix. That divine bird was actually wailing endlessly. The blood tide beneath Mu Jinghong's feet started to recede. However, her red dress was redder, and her red hair was longer. Within the black longsword, there was a trace of red light. Red and black, strange and resplendent. Swoosh, at this moment, Sumo shook the red dust ancient fan. The ancient fan opened. Whoosh, the white skeleton that Sumo could control at will suddenly flew out. Its 5 fingers formed a claw and went straight for Mu Jinghong. That move was very similar to Chun Fubai's skeleton claw. A ray of white light went straight for Mu Jinghong. However, the red-dressed Mu Jinghong did not dodge and went straight for the white skeleton. At that moment, it was like a decisive battle. The red-dressed and the white skeleton went for each other. However, just as the white skeleton was 3 feet away from Mu Jinghong, the corner of Mu Jinghong's mouth curved. This was because the black mark between her brows suddenly lit up. No soul, no path. How dare you hurt me? The mark between her brows and the 8 words were like a curse. Crack. The white skeleton instantly stood still in the air, not daring to move forward. At that moment, Sumo was stunned. At the same time, the pendant on her ancient fan suddenly lit up. The 2 ancient words, red dust, glowed brightly. At that moment, the others did not have much of a reaction. However, Guan Xiong, who was in the void, almost fell from the void. The heart of white bone. Guan Xiong had wandered on the white bones for it. Why was it on Sumo? If Guan Xiong was not worried about the entire white bone continent waking up, he would probably have rushed straight for the clouds. In an instant, a finger snapped. Mu Jinghong also saw the red light. Red dust. At that moment, Mu Jinghong smiled like a flower. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, nothingness to nothingness, nothingness to nothingness. 10,000 years of admiring the red dust, a lifetime of white bones. Everything was the best arrangement. Mu Jinghong came from the red dust, and then returned to the red dust. His lifetime of white bones was not in vain. Sumo, give me your life. Mu Jinghong's aura suddenly soared into the sky after he froze the white bones. The bright red light shone again, and a black light appeared. Mu Jinghong wielded the black sword and swooped down from the sky. The crane screeched and the god wailed. However, the red glowing black feather Shenhong simply hovered in the air. Because it had received Mu Jinghong's order. That was Mu Jinghong's most stunning sword strike. The red robe was like clouds and the black light was like ink. It was a moment of thick ink and color. At that moment, Mu Jinghong's sword went straight for Sumo's head. That sword strike was enough to kill Sumo. Not to mention Sumo, she could even kill a deity tribulation. Sumo, on the other hand, instinctively opened his ancient fan and fanned it fiercely. Whoosh, a red wind blew, and Mu Jinghong's red sand reappeared. At that moment, within the red light, Mu Jinghong's beautiful face was filled with endless murderous intent, but her eyes were filled with endless tenderness. It was an extremely contradictory state. At that moment, Sumo did not notice anything about Mu Jinghong. Go! With a thought, the broken bamboo pole soared into the sky. In the red wind, the green light shot up. In the red wind, the black light fell. Boom! The broken bamboo pole and the black sword collided. Boom! The two divine weapons collided, stirring up layers of ripples that spread out like waves. Mu Jinghong's red robe fluttered, and Sumo's green robe fluttered. The two stood in the void, one above and one below, staring at each other. However, one held the black sword, and the other held the bamboo pole. The look in their eyes was very special. Love and hate, warmth and coldness. Everything was clear to them. However, at this juncture of reincarnation, they could only face it with death. The Wheel of Time. On the Five Wheels mountain range, different cultivators could see them fight to the death from different angles. They did not know if this scene could be recreated. Sumo, my love, please forget about my demon-like appearance. Suddenly, Mu Jinghong, who had a murderous aura and was as cold as ice, smiled sweetly and spoke in a soft voice. Sumo was stunned, and at the same time, her heart ached. Chi-Pu, however, Sumo did not have time to react. Then, a shocking scene occurred. The water-like black sword in Mu Jinghong's hand suddenly turned into smoke and dissipated. However, Mu Jinghong's body rapidly fell. Chapter 190. Pu, blood splashed everywhere and the beauty fell. It was a scene that Sumo would never forget for the rest of her life. The broken bamboo pole had pierced through Mu Jinghong's immortal heart. Mu Jinghong had finally succeeded. Wow, the entire Five Paths immortal realm was in an uproar. The stunning Mu Jinghong of 3,000 years. She used to be the chosen one of the five wheels. The stunning Mu Jinghong of 3,000 years. She used to be the direct disciple of the Slekton sect's ancestral master. However, black dress was heartless, while red dress was bloodthirsty. The mystery of Mu Jinghong had never been solved. Her actions were full of contradictions. However, she had died in such a way? No one had expected this. Many people wanted to close their eyes at that moment, because they didn't want such a stunningly talented woman to perish. Guan Xiong raised his eyebrows. He didn't understand what Mu Jinghong wanted. He didn't know where Mu Jinghong had come from. Feng Shi heaved a long sigh. He had predicted Mu Jinghong's choice, but he wasn't happy at all. That was because he could only predict one part. He couldn't see the whole picture. And in that single instant of billions and billions of years, Sumo's heart was empty, blank and stupefied. Something seemed to have been sucked out of his soul. He had killed Mu Jinghong with his own hand. In fact, even Sumo didn't know if he wanted to kill Mu Jinghong or not. Whoosh, Mu Jinghong's body was pierced by the bamboo pole and fell toward Sumo. Sumo caught Mu Jinghong's body out of instinct. Although Mu Jinghong was still alive, his immortal heart had been shattered, and no one could save him. Senior Sister Mu. Senior Sister Mu. Sumo's body was shaking. Meanwhile, Mu Jinghong's red clothes and hair faded away, and he slowly turned back into the appearance he had when he first met Sumo. The demonic energy was gone. Black dress or red dress? Which one was the real Mu Jinghong? Senior Sister Mu. Why? Mu Jinghong's black clothes were stained with blood. At that moment, tears rolled down Sumo's cheeks. Did he hate Mu Jinghong? Of course he hated her. This was because he had personally witnessed Mu Jinghong massacre the disciples of the Five Wheels. He had personally witnessed Mu Jinghong kill the 8 wheels of windmill. He had personally heard Mu Jinghong's words of slaughter. Did he love Jinghong? Of course I do. If life was like the first time they met, Sumo hoped that Mu Jinghong would still be that cold and aloof immortal outside the silent Death Valley. If time could be reversed, Sumo hoped that Mu Jinghong would still be that shy girl on the fleeting cliff. In fact, if she could come back to life, Sumo was willing to freeze time at the moment of confrontation. It was Mu Jinghong who brought Sumo to 5 wheels. It was Mu Jinghong who risked his life for Sumo. It could be said that without Mu Jinghong there would be no Sumo. However, what was the purpose of all of this? Why did he end up like this? Sumo still didn't understand. Mu Jinghong was really forcing him to kill her. Sumo! At this moment, Mu Jinghong raised his hand and smiled gently. He gently caressed Sumo's face and wiped away her tears. Actually, Mu Jinghong didn't have a choice. Because only if I die in your hands will you remember who I am. Mu Jinghong's eyes were filled with tears. Sumo, I want to go home. I want to return to that sea of stars. I want to return to the planet that belongs to us. I want to sit under the plum blossom tree with you. Senior Sister Mu. Sumo didn't understand what Mu Jinghong was saying. Even though he was listening very hard. Mu Jinghong smiled sadly. You've forgotten everything, but it doesn't matter. I will let you remember. If 1 lifetime isn't enough, then 2 lifetimes. If 2 lifetimes aren't enough, then 3 lifetimes. If 3 lifetimes aren't enough, then 10 lifetimes. If 10 lifetimes aren't enough, then 100 lifetimes, 1,000 lifetimes. Mu Jinghong's tears flowed down his cheeks. Then I'll give you, Senior Sister Mu. At this moment, Sumo didn't want anything. He only hoped that Mu Jinghong wouldn't die. It's very obedient. I'll take everything else with me. Mu Jinghong smiled. At this moment, her lower body actually started to dissipate. It was an extremely unique way of dying. It was the dissipation of a soul. Everyone with a soul would die like that. No. Senior Sister Mu. Sumo panicked. However, Mu Jinghong was still smiling, even though there were tears in his eyes. Sumo, 3 lifetimes as one, I will wait for you in reincarnation. You will meet me again. Whoosh, a gust of wind blew away the person in Sumo's arms. Everything about Mu Jinghong finally dissipated. The black feather god let out a long cry that pierced through the clouds. Sumo also raised his head and roared, but his arms were empty. Suddenly, a voice echoed in Sumo's mind. Caressing the longsword, singing in the snow. Endless ages, passing by in a flash. Let heaven and earth grow old, a beauty and white hair, who can know me? The mortal world is boundless, who is an immortal? Who is a demon? The 3 realms are empty. Beyond the blue sky, don't ask what karma is on the wheel. Smiling at the 3,000 paths, I tell you, unwilling to be a passerby. What song was that? What song was that? Sumo's blood surged, her dantian chaotic. She held her head with both hands, her head aching. Instantly, she felt the world spin, starlight flew into her mind. 1 starlight, 1 love, 1 starlight, 1 hatred. However, the scattered starlight could not form a boundless sea of stars. They were only meteors that cut through the dark sky, bringing a moment of light. However, Sumo still could not see the boundless darkness. Plum blossoms! Plum blossoms! In a trance, Sumo saw plum blossoms filling the sky. Scattered into mud and dust, only the fragrance remained. What about Mu Jinghong? His body was gone, where was his soul? However, a bloody light erased all of Sumo's illusions. Sumo's head hurt so much she could not control it. In the void, Sumo rolled and howled incessantly. The pain came from her soul. Roar, roar, in the void, the white skeletons Sumo summoned resonated with it. Roar, roar, but suddenly the entire 5 paths immortal realm let out an indescribable roar. The entire earth was heaving, heavy breathing filled everyone's ears. What was going on? All the cultivators' expressions changed. Because everyone felt the earth shaking. Something seemed to be coming out from under the immortal realm. Boom, crack, in the direction of the Slekton sect, peaks collapsed, the sky cracked and the earth caved in. 7 beams of light rose from the white forehead, white eyes, white ears, white nose, and white mouth. Ah, roar! The 7 peaks collapsed, rocks flew everywhere. The 7 beams of light could be seen from the 5 paths immortal wheel. At that moment, the young monks of the immortal temple all stood up. However, in the end, he still chose not to go. Because if it did not work, he could still make a move here. Hua Chunfubai spat out a mouthful of blood. It was because a white skeleton flew out from his bosom, directly heading north. Its target was the White Bone 100 Convergence Peak. White Bone Transformation! Chunfubai and Feng Shi shouted almost at the same time. 40,000 years ago, Chunfubai had heard of a distant legend. The White Bone continent was formed by a white skeleton from beyond the heavens, and that skeleton did not really die. Instead, it had fallen into a deep sleep. Feng Shi knew that the legend was true. Right now, if someone looked down at the White Bone continent, they would see. The white skeleton's head was slightly raised. Its upper body was also moving. Feng Shi looked up at the clouds. Descendant of the Immortal Void sect, what are you waiting for? Almost at the same time, Guan Xiong had already made his move. Because he could already see the entire skeleton turning over and raising its head. That was absolutely impossible. Seal! Guan Xiong waved one hand. There were 7 chess pieces in his hand. 2 were black and 5 were white. They went straight for the Slekton sect. The 7 chess pieces were facing 1 peak each, sealing the 7 orifices of the skeleton. Suppress! At the same time, Guan Xiong formed hand seals in the sky, and Feng Shi formed hand seals on the 5 paths immortal wheel. The 2 divine tribulations formed hand seals at the same time. Guan Xiong fell from the sky. The power of the divine tribulation shook the entire northern region of the White Bone continent. Rumble, rumble, the 2 of them pressed on the 5 paths immortal wheel at the same time. Ah, roar, whoosh! The earth shook and countless mountains in the 5 paths mountain range cracked and collapsed. Almost all the disciples of the 2 sects were knocked away by the powerful Dharma seals. Except for a few soul transformation cultivators, even nascent soul cultivators had to retreat. Guan Xiong and Feng Shi were like 2 gods. Boom, whoosh, roar. The endless power of the divine tribulation swept up a gust of wind and sent rocks flying. Their energies spread in the sky. Boom, crack. The mountains collapsed as if doomsday had come. The 5 paths mountain gate had already collapsed. Many cultivators could only protect themselves. Guan Xiong and Feng Shi activated the seal with all their strength. Runes spread quickly like a spider web with the 2 of them as the center. The power of the divine tribulation seeped into the earth. Boom, boom, after a long time. Everything went back to normal after the sound died down. The earth finally stopped shaking. Sumo, his red dust fan, the bamboo pole, and the ragged bag all landed on the ground. All the skeletons disappeared because they had been taken back by the ragged bag. Sumo fainted on the ground. His long hair was like grass and his face was pale. Black Feather Shenhong stopped next to him. Guan Xiong and Feng Shi both let out a sigh of relief. Their backs were already soaked. Luckily, the skeleton was just about to wake up. If it weren't for the 7 chess pieces that sealed the skeleton's 7 orifices, a divine tribulation cultivator couldn't control everything. They survived a disaster. However, the 5 Paths mountain range was no longer the 5 Paths mountain range and the White Bones mountain range. The landscape of the entire northern region of the White Bones mountain range had changed a lot. The distance between the 5 Paths mountain range and the White Bones mountain range was less than 30,000 miles. The mountains and mountains had been reorganized. The 7 chess pieces turned into giant black and white mountains and suppressed the mountains of the White Bones mountain range. The divine tribulation suppressing the White Bones mountain range. From then on, the energy of a soul transformation cultivator would never disturb the northern region of the White Bones mountain range. Soul transformation cultivators could cultivate here and didn't have to go far. As long as there was no divine tribulation battle, the seal wouldn't be activated. The battle was finally over. 9 days later, Sumo woke up, but he didn't say a word all day. Old dreams of the past, passing clouds and smoke. Sumo seemed to have changed into a different person. Later, Sumo left the Five Paths mountain range and the Slekton sect. Only a few people in the sect knew where Sumo went. They only knew that Sumo met Zhao Yunxing before she left and gave him a lot of elixirs. He had also visited a few apprentice cultivators at the same time, including Shao Chia and Chen Dong. Then, Sumo and Bai Lai got drunk. During that time, Sumo pointed at Bai Lai's nose and yelled, "Bai Lai, you lied to me." That night, Sumo cried. Bai Lai sighed. Later, Sumo knelt for 3 days and 3 nights in the 9th peak of the Wind Wheel mountain range. In the end, he left with Guan Xiong. 100 years later, the Five Paths mountain range and the White Bones mountain range had completely merged and was no longer called the White Bones mountain range. The battle back then had changed a lot. In the end, the divine tribulation suppressed the White Bones mountain range. So, the Five Paths mountain range and the White Bones mountain range were renamed the Divine Tribulation sect. Chapter 191. White Bone Continent, Southwest Region. The southernmost part was originally a barren land with a radius of 10,000 kilometers. It could be said to be an extremely dangerous place. Legend had it that this was the last place the entire White Bone Continent had appeared. Only after thousands of transformations did its true form appear. Tens of thousands of years ago, this place had never been peaceful. Ferocious beasts roamed about, demons roamed about, and the place was desolate and uninhabited. However, one day, a ray of Buddhist light descended from the heavens and entered the earth. 10,000 years later, a temple was built here, and it was named Wanhuang. From then on, the White Bone Continent's southwest region was bathed in Buddhist light. It was peaceful, and more people were living there. 10,000 Desolate Temple, also known as Immortal Temple, because there were only 300 disciples in the Wanhuang Temple. However, those 300 disciples didn't age even after 10,000 years. Their youth was eternal, and they always looked young. One of the 3 great sacred grounds of the White Bone Continent, Thousand Desolation Temple, mysterious and unknown. It was the most transcendent being at the southern end of the Bone Continent. However, it was rumored that even ordinary commoners had the opportunity to pay respects to Buddha at the Wanhuang Temple. However, what one could see would depend on one's fate. 3,000 miles away from the 10,000 Desolation Temple, there was a small mortal town. The town was neither too big nor too small, with about 100 or so households. The streets were perfectly straight and the bamboo buildings were neat and tidy. There were some grocery stores on the street, and there were people coming in and out from time to time, but there was not much noise. The Bluestone Road was clean and spacious. Everything was tranquil, quiet, and peaceful. In the center of the town, there was a small square paved with bluestone. Many ancient trees were planted all around the square. They were tall and straight with luxuriant foliage. There were stone benches and tables under the tree. On the stone table, there was a 19-way chessboard. In the center of the square, there was a lotus sculpture. That lotus was slender and elegant, but it was still budding. It was as white as jade, vivid and lifelike. It was as if a cool breeze was blowing, and in the next moment, it would unhurriedly open. The entire square gave off the feeling of a small town. It was tranquil, peaceful, and even somewhat otherworldly. At this time, it was in the afternoon, so very few people came. Under the ancient tree, only a few townspeople were enjoying the cool air and chatting. Judging from the way they dressed and talked, the people in this town lived a rich life, not poor at all. On the square, a few children who were playing were the only ones who were slightly noisy. Under an ancient tree, two people were playing chess. Black and white clashed, their movements filled with killing intent. However, the expressions of the two players were completely different. The one holding the white ghost stone was a fatty. His body was like a ball and his eyes were slightly narrowed. It was almost impossible to see his eyes, which were completely slits. However, he was still smiling. Although the fatty looked a bit despicable, his chess skills were more profound. In this situation, white had the upper hand. Everything on the chessboard was under his control. The person holding the black chess piece was a man in green. He looked to be in his early 20s, but his eyes were reserved. At this moment, he was holding a black chess piece in one hand, his eyebrows slightly furrowed. On the board, the white pieces had already occupied two corners, while the black pieces only had one corner in hand. In the other corner and the central region, the white pieces were closing in step by step, and the black pieces were also in imminent danger. In this round, Blackie could lose at any time, because Blackie was heavily surrounded and practically had nowhere to go. The few paths he could take were all within Fatty's expectations. Sumo, you have nowhere to go. You only have a chance of survival if you play here. However, if I take your position, your 7 pieces will be in my pocket. Let's go. Guan Xiong was pointing and talking, quite pleased with himself. He had been immersed in this path for hundreds of years and was quite knowledgeable. Sumo, on the other hand, had only been practicing for 10 or 20 years. Although she improved rapidly, she was originally Guan Xiong's disciple, so how could she be his opponent? However, Sumo laughed coldly. He did not play according to Guan Xiong's plan. Instead, he placed the black chess piece in his hand at the lower left corner. Stab. Huh! Guan Xiong looked and couldn't help but be angry. Sumo, you're messing around. With this stab, even if you can win this corner, the central region will be empty, and you'll lose a large piece of fertile land. With this move, you'll lose everything, and there's almost no chance to turn things around. Guan Xiong was extremely angry, as if he was reprimanding a disobedient student. He was extremely angry. Sumo sneered, then with a wave of his hand he directly gave up. Guan Xiong, I know there's no chance to turn things around, and I'll definitely die. But I want to play like this. How about it? Why? Guan Xiong asked. Because I want to. Sumo maintained his cold smile. I, Sumo, only want to play my own chess. Life and death is not within the scope of my consideration. Sumo looked at Guan Xiong and said, just now, in the chess game, I had already entered your dead end. If it's about life and death, I can only play according to your plan, but the result is still death. Since that's the case, why should I play according to your plan? That would only increase your satisfaction and pleasure. I play my own chess, I have my own fun. Sumo looked at Guan Xiong and ridiculed. Damn fatty, seeing your flustered and exasperated look is so funny. Although I lost, I'm still very happy. Ha ha, Sumo couldn't help but laugh. Guan Xiong was so angry that his face turned red, but his eyes were filled with helplessness. Guan Xiong, I, Sumo, will not be anyone's chess piece. Finished laughing. The corner of Sumo's mouth curved coldly, then he stood up, clasped his hands behind his back, and looked at the children playing in the distance. At that moment, a trace of warmth appeared in his eyes. Ai. Guan Xiong shook his head, sighing deeply. After the 5 wheels of White Bones battle, Sumo's temperament had changed greatly. Cold, deep, and self-centered. Because of the death of Windmill, because he personally killed Mu Jinghong, because Bai Lai lied to him too much. Because Sumo believed that not a single one of them could have happened. What White Bones grudge? What Holy Wheel's teachings? What life and death? In Sumo's eyes, 5 wheels and Slekton sect cooperated to put on a farce and a scam. Since the gods' tribulation appeared, it could suppress everything. Then why bother? Sumo's thinking was simple and extreme. But this was the way of the world. Simple and effective might not be desirable at that time. Many complications were involved. It was as if the end of life was actually death. Then, was there no need to live any more? All the experiences and processes were the paintbrush for love and hate, happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy. If there were no twists and turns, how could it be exciting? Although Sumo did not understand the choices made by Bai Lai and Guan Xiong, and even the choice made by the windmill faction, they were not wrong. At the same time, Sumo was not wrong. Actually, he did not want the windmill empowerment. He could give up his soul transformation realm cultivation. He still hoped that the windmill faction was still there, and that Mu Jinghong was still the cold but occasionally shy senior sister. But, if that was the case, time would stand still. Sumo thought about these problems for nearly 100 years before he gradually got over it. No one was wrong. But Sumo was no longer the Sumo of the past. He wanted to completely walk his own path. Just as he said, he would not be anyone's chess piece. After the 5 wheels of war, he woke up from the endless darkness. Then, many strange sounds and images appeared in his mind. That song, that plum blossom, and that fragmented sea of stars. Sumo was definitely not a simple Sumo. So, he wanted to advance to the gods' tribulation, he wanted to leave the white bone continent, he wanted to start searching for his true self. Chapter 192. The leaves rustled in the gentle breeze. Guan Xiong could only sigh at Sumo's words. He understood Sumo's feelings. Anyone would have a drastic change in personality after experiencing such a change. Although he had a near-invincible cultivation base on the Bone mainland, Sumo had also lost a lot of warmth and happiness. Gain and loss, light and heavy. People would never be able to explain it clearly. Perhaps this was the pain of life. After leaving 5 wheels, Guan Xiong spent most of his time traveling around the Bone mainland with Sumo. To Sumo, he had seen a lot of things. The Bone mainland's central region had the east and west profound valleys. Those 2 first-class immortal sects were even more powerful than 5 wheels and Slekton sect. The southern region of the Bone mainland had existences like Bliss Palace. Inside Bliss Palace there were soul transformation cultivators. Along the way, Sumo had indeed broadened his horizons, but his realm had remained at great perfection of soul transformation. In the beginning, Sumo was almost unwilling to talk to Guan Xiong. He could stay in one place for more than 10 years. Later, Sumo's situation improved slightly. However, Sumo could never return to his former self. Cold and deep, Guan Xiong was like a servant when he was with Sumo. Guan Xiong was probably the most powerful servant in the entire White Bone continent. Because he was the heir of the immortal Void Realm, a deity tribulation body. However, in Sumo's eyes, Guan Xiong was Guan Xiong. A damn fatty. The so-called realm seemed to be floating clouds in Sumo's eyes. It was like the night before 5 wheels left, when Sumo pointed at his nose and scolded Bai Lai. What Bai Lai? What deity tribulation? What deity tribulation? I, Sumo, was scolding you. You stinking beggar. You King lied to me. Why did you want me to enter Wind Wheel? Why didn't you stop it from happening? That night, Sumo was bossy and arrogant, drinking and cursing. At that time, Guan Xiong was also present. The 4 soul transformation cultivators looked at each other and were speechless. At that time, Guan Xiong thought to himself, Sumo, you're really the best on the Bone continent. A soul transformation realm cultivator dared to scold the god Tribulation. In the past 100 years, Sumo had also scolded Guan Xiong. However, no matter what Sumo said, Guan Xiong was not really angry. This was because Guan Xiong was originally a slave, and he had cultivated a body of excellent qi cultivation. Guan Xiong would sometimes glare angrily, but in fact it was to cooperate with Sumo. Moreover, Guan Xiong had received the mission of accompanying Sumo in secret. He had found the heart of white bone. It was with Sumo. The pendant on the red dust fan was the heart of white bone. His new mission was to protect Sumo. Of course, in recent years, Sumo's temperament had improved slightly. He seemed to be thinking more clearly about many things. He basically stopped scolding Guan Xiong. Guan Xiong understood that Sumo was acting like this because he valued friendship too much. At this time, Sumo stood with his hands behind his back, looking seriously at the few mortal children. Guan Xiong stood behind him, not saying a word. Because he knew that many times, Sumo understood many things in this state. From mortal to immortal. However, many things still needed to be understood from the mortal world. There were a total of 5 children, 2 boys and 3 girls, all about 8 or 9 years old. They were noisy, as if they were going to put on a play together. However, there was some controversy when they were dividing the roles. "I don't want to play a fox spirit." One of the slightly younger girls pouted. "My mother said that fox spirits are not good things." "What fox spirit? Nonsense. That's a fox immortal, a beautiful female fox immortal." Another slightly older girl said. "I don't care. Anyway, I don't want to play." The little girl said angrily, "Foxes are not good. I want to play the Holy Maiden, and then Big Brother will come and save me." The slightly older girl rolled her eyes at the little girl and said unhappily, "The Holy Maiden will die in the end. You want to play it too? So what if I die? Anyway, it's all fake. Can't the Holy Maiden be married by the love monk? It's good to be a bride. Shameless." "Humph," the slightly older girl said. "Then I'll play the fox immortal." Another girl next to her said with a smile, "Actually, it's all the same. Let Xiao Yu play the Holy Maiden, and Yao Yao, you play my righteous heroine." "Okay then." The 3 girls finally reached an agreement. There was no dispute between the 2 boys. One was a devil, and the other was a love monk. Sumo watched with interest. He felt that these children were very interesting. What kind of play was this? Sumo watched, and so did Guan Xiong. The world of children was always full of imagination. They could even create an entire world through their imagination. Thus, their performance began. In fact, there was almost nothing on the small square. However, a tree was a mountain, a stone table was a palace. A tree branch was an immortal sword, a blue stone was a magic treasure. They even pointed at Sumo and Guan Xiong and said, "They are the demon's minions." Sumo smiled, and Guan Xiong laughed. The story that the children acted out was very simple. The Holy Maiden and the Love Monk were a pair of lovers. However, the Fox Immortal liked the Love Monk. On the wedding day of the Holy Maiden and the Love Monk, the Fox Immortal begged the devil to secretly capture the Holy Maiden, and she herself became the Holy Maiden and married the Love Monk. Later, the matter was exposed. The Love Monk sought revenge on the devil. In the end, a heroine helped the Love Monk to kill the devil. However, the Holy Maiden died to save the Love Monk, and the Fox Immortal fled because of shame. In the end, the Love Monk lost all hope and became a monk. From then on, the Love Monk felt compassion for the world, cultivated the great Tao, and finally obtained the name Love Monk. Before that, no one knew his name. In fact, the story was very simple, but it did not seem simple at the same time. Because of the final battle, the small square was filled with branches and bluestones. It was very intense. When the Holy Maiden died, the Love Monk was in so much pain that he wanted to commit suicide. Those children were very talented in acting, and it seemed like they were always acting out that scene. After reading it, Sumo smiled and let out a long sigh. After reading it, Guan Xiong muttered to himself, "It seems that monks don't really want to be monks." That Love Monk is the founder of Wanhuang Temple, right? Sumo said to Guan Xiong. Guan Xiong smiled and shook his head. That meant that it was a child's game. How could it be taken seriously? Moreover, many folklore could not be taken seriously because it had long lost its authenticity after being interpreted by later generations. However, Sumo did not think much of it. He waved his hand and called the children over. Then, he flipped his hand and a few fruits appeared in his palm. Of course, Sumo's fruits were not ordinary. Unfortunately, only the girl who knew how to give in took one. Zixiang, mother doesn't let us take other people's things. A boy said. He's not a bad person. Little Zixiang said with a smile and directly ate the fruit. It was really sweet and delicious. Delicious. The little girl smiled sweetly. Sumo sighed in her heart. This was a fortuitous encounter. Because of that fruit, this little girl would definitely be able to nurture immortal roots in the future and become an extraordinary cultivator. Unfortunately, the other children were not willing to eat it. Children, I want to ask, where is the love monk? Sumo asked with a smile. In the great temple in the south. The children said in unison, very far, very far. Chapter 193. That town was called White Lotus. Sumo and Guanxiong had been there for 3 or 4 days. In fact, this was just a very ordinary town within 10,000 miles of Wanhuang Temple. And there were many other towns like this around. White Lotus Town was one of the closest towns. However, in Wanhuang Temple's immortal territory, all the towns seemed to have a lotus statue. For Sumo and Guanxiong, 3,000 miles could be covered in a single step. However, they still walked out of the town step by step. These towns are not ordinary, Guanxiong said. Oh? Ha! Sumo asked, what's so special about them? Can't you tell? You already know the answer, Guanxiong sneered. You're saying that the 3,000 Buddha lotus can suppress the bones? Sumo said. That's right. Guanxiong said. The southernmost point of the White Bone Continent is the foot of the bones. It's extremely difficult to control. Wanhuang Temple only has 300 monks. Even if they're all nascent souls, it's not easy. Therefore, they use the power of mortals to cultivate the lotus to suppress the bones. However, the lifespan of the mortals in the 3,000 towns will be halved. Planting the lotus on the bones is the best plan. Sumo sneered. If not for Wanhuang Temple, the southernmost point of the bones would be barren and filled with ferocious beasts. Now, even if their lifespan is reduced, they'll live a peaceful life without suffering or pain. This is better than Sheng Luan's so-called peace with killing. Haha. Guanxiong was non-committal. Sheng Luan's actions in the past had not yet been determined. They could only speculate from the Sheng Luan's ancestral teachings. However, Sumo was already prejudiced after the 5 battles of bones. The two talked as they walked, and soon they were outside the town. Although the people in these towns were all mortals, they all had a special priest. This priest was usually an old man. On special days, the whole town would kowtow to the Buddha lotus under his leadership. Esteemed guests, are you leaving? Outside the town, the priest of White Lotus Town happened to bump into Sumo and Guanxiong. He bowed and greeted them. They had met 3 days ago. It was the same priest who had arranged for them to stay in an inn. Sorry to disturb you for 3 days. We are indeed leaving. Sumo returned the courtesy. Esteemed guests, if you go to the temple to worship Buddha, please help us pray for White Lotus in front of the holy monk. The old priest said sincerely. Half a month later, it will be the grand assembly of the divine temple. At that time, there will be guests from all over. May the 2 esteemed guests form a sacred fate and see the light of Buddha. Thank you for your auspicious words. Don't worry, if we go to the temple, we won't forget your instructions, Sumo said. The old priest bowed again. Only then did Sumo and Guanxiong truly leave White Lotus Town and head south. The 2 of them did not use any divine abilities and continued to walk slowly. Over the past 100 years they had spent a lot of time like this. That old priest was a cultivator, Guanxiong said. Sumo nodded, however. He is only at the third stage of chi refining. Such a cultivator can only be said to be slightly better than mortals, right? Guan Xiong nodded. Sumo, do you know why there's a cultivator here? Guan Xiong asked, keeping her in suspense. This kind of situation always happened to Guan Xiong. This was because Guan Xiong was much more familiar with the White Bone continent than Sumo. The successor of the immortal Void Realm, a deity tribulation expert, the White Bone Patrol envoy. It could be said that besides Silent Death Valley, there was no place on the White Bone continent that Guan Xiong did not know or was unfamiliar with. He was a living map. Guan Xiong had even stayed in many sects, just like when he was at the Five Wheels. I don't know, Sumo answered calmly. Actually, under normal circumstances, most people would ask why. However, Sumo was not an ordinary person under normal circumstances. After living together for 100 years, Guan Xiong naturally knew Sumo's personality. Thus, he smacked his lips, feeling a little bored. Guan Xiong could only answer his own question. Why? Because they are all lamplighters. Lamplighters? Sumo's interest was piqued. What kind of lamplighters? The White Lotus lamp. Guan Xiong said. The 3,000 white lotuses need to be lit by someone before they can display their power. The old priest's third level of chi refinement didn't come from his own cultivation, but rather from the immortal temple's monks. Oh! Sumo was stunned. Then what do you mean by lighting a lamp? It means sacrificing one's life for the Tao. Guan Xiong sneered. Compassion also comes with a price. The 3,000 lotuses need to be lit to suppress the demon. On Demon Suppression Day, when the lamps are lit, is their limit. Suemo furrowed his brows. However, as long as the white bones don't move, the priests will never die. Those priests can live forever. Undead? Suemo was stunned. Undead realm? Guan Xiong shook his head. Of course not the undying realm. That is only a secret technique of the Immortal Temple. As for how it is done, I don't know either. You are going to the Immortal Temple this time to search for the secrets of the bloodline inheritance, right? Perhaps if fate wills it, you can ask around. Guan Xiong looked at Sumo with a smile. Guan Xiong, what is above the undying realm? Sumo suddenly asked. Guan Xiong shook his head again. Sumo, I told you before that when you reach that level, you will naturally understand. I can only say that the undying realm is only the highest level of the first stage of cultivation. Cultivation still has the second stage, the third stage, and so on. The path to immortality is long and boundless. The White Bone continent is only a small piece of white bone. The Pure Land world is extremely large. Moreover, beyond this world, there is another world. As long as your cultivation reaches a certain level, you will naturally understand everything. Between the worlds, is there really reincarnation? This was a question Sumo often asked Guan Xiong. There definitely is. Guan Xiong patiently replied. It was because he knew what this answer meant for Sumo. And Sumo nodded. This was his motivation. It was because Guan Xiong told him that the Windwheel Masters only went to another time and space. When Mu Jinghong died, he told him, I will wait for you in the reincarnation. Didn't 7th Senior Sister also say that she would wait for him to return? If there was reincarnation, then everything could be replayed. Suemo had this hope in his heart, which was why he kept on cultivating. There were too many mysteries in his heart, and he needed to continuously improve his cultivation to solve them. This time, he was going to the Immortal Temple because he wanted to investigate the problem of bloodline cultivation. At the same time, he wanted to ask a few other questions. It was because it was rumored that the Immortal Temple could solve the doubts of all living beings. Sumo was indeed puzzled. Guan Xiong had said that if Sumo had any doubts, he could ask him. However, Sumo didn't open his mouth. Bai Lai and Guan Xiong were both divine tribulation transcendents, but Sumo didn't want to ask them. Today, Sumo saw the children's play. As such, he wanted to see the legendary immortal master of the 10,000 Desolation Temple. A gathering of wind and clouds. He heard that in half a month the immortal temple was going to hold a great assembly. The cultivators of the White Bone Continent and many sects in the southern region should be attending. Sumo also wanted to use this opportunity to purify the Buddhist sound. Chapter 194. Wanwang Temple was also known as the Immortal Temple. Its location in the southern region of White Bones was similar to the Slekton Sect's Baihui Peak. There were few mountains in the southern region, but Wanwang Temple was still on a tall mountain. Wanwang Temple was halfway up the mountain. It was a group of temples that were neither too big nor too small, built against the mountain. There were 2 courtyards and many temples, but they only covered an area of 100 acres. The Divine Sun Dharma Assembly of Wanwang Temple was in 3 days. The Divine Sun Dharma Assembly was held once every 30 years. Many sects in the southern region of White Bones would usually send disciples to participate. At the same time, many itinerant cultivators came to watch the ceremony. There were even many mortals who traveled over mountains and rivers. Wanwang Temple's status in the southern region of White Bones was too high. The sects in the southern region of White Bones all wanted to show their respect. As for the itinerant cultivators and mortals, they wanted to answer questions. The Dharma Assembly had a total of 9 days. 3 of them were for the Taoists of Wanwang Temple to answer questions. There were mortals at the foot of Wanwang Temple's mountain. The mountain path was winding, but it was spacious. It wasn't crowded for 4 or 5 people to walk side by side. To show respect to Wanwang Temple, most cultivators who participated in the Dharma Assembly would walk up the mountain. Only nascent soul cultivators would walk up the mountain. Along the way, Su Mo and Guan Xiong seemed to have been infected by the dust of the mortal world. 60 years ago, Guan Xiong had participated in the Divine Sun Dharma Assembly and found it boring. At least, that was the case. At the moment, to outsiders, Sumo and Guan Xiong were only mid-stage foundation establishment cultivators. This was Guan Xiong's technique. As long as one wasn't a deity tribulation cultivator, no one would be able to see through their cultivation. Guan Xiong used this secret technique to travel across the White Bone mainland. As they walked, they could see the temple gate in the distance. As long as they were a cultivator, it wouldn't take much effort to climb the mountain. However, the mortals were different. However, they were more sincere. There were even mortals who kowtowed every 3 steps and walked up the stairs. Sumo shook her head. Guan Xiong chuckled and said, "Sincerity works." The gate of Wanwang Temple wasn't majestic. It was even a little old. There were 2 greeting monks standing at the gate. They looked 17 or 18 years old. The 2 little monks put their palms together and looked peaceful. Every time they passed, they would smile and nod in greeting, whether they were cultivators or mortals. At this moment, the sound of a woman's laughter could be heard from behind the temple door. At this time, Sumo and Guan Xiong were only a few dozen feet away from the temple gate. They couldn't help but raise their heads to look. It turned out that there were a few women standing in front of the temple gate. They were all cultivators, all of them wearing gorgeous clothes, their appearances extremely beautiful, their spirits flying about. However, there was a hint of flirtatiousness between their brows. Among the 4 women, 3 of them were at the late stage of foundation establishment, and one of them was already at the peak of foundation establishment. This level of cultivation was definitely not low. A female cultivator from the Bliss Palace. Guan Xiong's small eyes narrowed into slits. "Sumo, I'm afraid we're in luck this time." Sumo laughed coldly. Of course, he knew about the Bliss Palace. It was a first-rate immortal sect in the southern region of White Bones, and its status was similar to the 5 Wheels of Bones in the northern region of White Bones. However, the Bliss Palace had always had a bad reputation. The reason for the Bliss Palace's name was because it specialized in dual cultivation between men and women. Men and women were like cauldrons to each other, indulging in debauchery in search of bliss and enlightenment. The beauty of it was not to be known to outsiders. However, dual cultivation had always been looked down upon by orthodox cultivation sections. Evil and unorthodox sects were not orthodox. The Bliss Palace was almost synonymous with perversion in the world of cultivation. However, in the southern region of White Bones, the Bliss Palace thrived and stood tall for tens of thousands of years. Legend had it that the Bliss Palace had a soul transformation cultivator. Back in the day, Grandmaster Yuji of the Five Wheels had some contact with the Bliss Palace. At this moment, the 4 female cultivators were teasing the 2 young monks. "Little monk, you're so handsome. Why don't you return to the palace with me? I'll make sure you enjoy all the bliss in the world. What do you think?" One of the yellow-clothed female cultivators smiled. "Thank you, benefactor. I'm just a guard here, and I'm not that lucky." After hearing the female cultivator's words, the young monk who was being teased was not at all annoyed. Instead, he smiled warmly. "Yo!" Another female cultivator in pink giggled. "What's wrong, little master? Do you think my sister isn't good enough for you? If so, you can choose whichever of us sisters is good enough for you." That's right. Little monk, as long as you're willing, we sisters can do anything." Another female cultivator, who was even more beautiful, pursed her lips and giggled. "And you too, little master. You can do it too. As long as it's a monk from the Wanwang Temple, we sisters will be happy to serve you." The last female cultivator spoke as well. These 4 female cultivators had no qualms at all. They were like prostitutes from a brothel. The cultivators and mortals at the side could not help but frown. Even though the 4 women were as beautiful as flowers, they were filthy in the eyes of many. Guan Xiong, on the other hand, had a lecherous look on his face. His eyes kept roaming all over the 4 female cultivators. "The Bliss Palace, hee." Guan Xiong rubbed his chin, looking like a pervert. "You're still short of women?" Suemo ridiculed Guan Xiong. "Didn't you say that you can summon and dismiss everything on the white bone at your beck and call?" Guan Xiong rolled his eyes at Sumo. "You don't understand. The female cultivators from the Bliss Palace are hard to come by." "Hard to come by?" Sumo smirked. "Didn't you meet one today?" Guan Xiong ignored Sumo and looked at the female cultivators. In truth, Guan Xiong was wondering why the Bliss Palace was participating in the Dharma assembly as well. Didn't they say that the Bliss Palace never participated in the Divine Sun Dharma assembly? He looked at the 2 little monks from the Wanwang Temple again. They looked the same as before. They were neither embarrassed nor angry. They merely smiled warmly and said, "Ladies, it's true that I'm not blessed. Since you're here to pay your respects to Buddha, please enter the temple." Hey! The 4 female cultivators did not seem to want to give up. Among them, the female cultivator in pink raised her hand to touch the little monk's cheek. "Little monk, let me have a taste." The other female cultivators wanted to make a move as well. They giggled incessantly. "You're courting death," Sumo said in disdain. That was because she could tell that the 2 little monks were no ordinary people. Guan Xiong shook his head at the side. These female cultivators really didn't know what was good for them. How could they touch the monks of the Wanwang Temple so casually? The pink-clad female cultivator touched the little monk's cheek with her finger. However, she felt as if she had touched a hot iron brand in an instant. Her finger was scorching hot and it hurt both her body and mind. Ba! The little monk who was touched did not show the slightest bit of anger, nor did he look pleased. It was as if nothing had happened. "Ladies, please enter the temple. Regardless of whether you're here to pay respects to Buddha or to seek answers to your doubts, our Thousand Desolation Temple welcomes them," another young monk said. The pink-clad female cultivator did not succeed. A strange look flashed in her eyes. The other 3 female cultivators restrained their expressions when they saw that they had suffered a loss. Therefore, the 4 of them stopped pestering him and entered the Wan Huang temple while laughing. How can you touch a nascent soul cultivator's face so casually? Sumo looked at the backs of the 4 female cultivators. It seemed that the rumors of the Wan Huang temple's 300 nascent soul cultivators were true. That was because the 2 little monks guarding the door were nascent soul cultivators. However, cultivators who were not at the soul transformation realm and above would not be able to see through them. Guan Xiong, on the other hand, smacked his lips and said meaningfully, "The female cultivators of the Bliss Palace are definitely not this weak. Looks like the Divine Sun Dharma Assembly this time is going to be interesting." Sumo nodded. Chapter 195. 3 days later, it would be the assembly. Inside Wan Huang Temple, there were many worshippers bustling about. What happened outside the temple gate was only a small interlude. As the flow of people flowed, people gradually stopped paying attention. Sumo and Guan Xiong had already entered Wan Huang Temple. Of course, this was only the front courtyard of Wan Huang Temple. There were all kinds of people in the courtyard, but there weren't many true monks. Sumo paid attention. There were many courtyards and palaces in the front courtyard, but there weren't many true monks in Wan Huang Temple. It seemed like there were only 4 corners, each with a small monk standing there. Those small monks weren't very conspicuous, as if they were ordinary greeting monks. They all had warm smiles on their faces and were modest and polite. If someone asked for directions or something, they would patiently answer them. However, without exception, they were all at the nascent soul level. A nascent soul realm gatekeeper monk, a nascent soul realm guardian monk. This Wan Huang Temple style wasn't something the 5 Wheels and White Bone sects could compare to. The White Bone Holy Land's resources were indeed deep. One has to know that the 5 Wheels and Slekton sects' nascent soul cultivators were all old ancestor-level existences. If they were here, they would actually need to guard the gate. There were many worshippers here, and the ones in charge of the front courtyard's affairs were all cultivators with long hair. Inside Wan Huang Temple, there is no distinction between inner and outer sect. There is only the front courtyard and the back courtyard. Guan Xiong transmitted sound to Sumo. This front courtyard is like the outer sect of the 5 Wheels. Most of it is managed by secular disciples. However, the truly powerful ones were the few seemingly insignificant little monks. Once they set up their residence here, there will be no accidents. This is because their divine senses are always on guard against everything. All cultivators that come here are within their control. Unless you are at my level. All worldly matters are carried out here. The Divine Sun Assembly will also be held in the 3rd courtyard. However, there should be 7 higher-ranked mages who will appear to explain the scriptures and dispel doubts. In short, the Immortal Temple can be considered the conscience of the White Bone continent. Guan Xiong laughed bitterly. In reality, sometimes, he didn't understand why the high and mighty Immortal Temple cared so much about the White Bone Ant. The great assembly that was held once every 30 years could be considered a waste of resources. However, the Immortal Temple had enjoyed this for tens of thousands of years, never getting tired of it. Moreover, the scale of this Dharma assembly seemed to be growing larger and larger. Sumo nodded slightly as she listened. His thoughts were different from Guan Xiong's. He felt an indescribable sense of respect towards the Immortal Temple's actions. Meanwhile, the rear courtyard is the true Immortal Temple. Most of the 300 nascent soul cultivators were cultivating in the backyard. Unfortunately, it's definitely not a place that ordinary people can set foot in. Guan Xiong continued to transmit his voice. Have you been there? Sumo asked. No. Guan Xiong shook his head. 300 nascent soul cultivators are just the immortal temple's regular strength. The immortal temple was so large, so there was definitely going to be a divine tribulation, and it might not just be one. If I have nothing to do, I will absolutely not disturb a deity tribulation cultivator. Divine tribulation. Haha. Sumo raised her head and looked towards the immortal temple's rear courtyard. A strange expression flashed past the depths of her eyes. The backyard was the place where he could answer his questions. Guanxiong, if I do something big in the immortal temple, you will be punished. Can you guarantee my safety? Sumo asked with a faint smile. Guanxiong asked nervously, what are you going to do? Guanxiong knew that Sumo was capable of doing anything after spending nearly 100 years together. After all, Sumo's true goal in coming to the immortal temple this time was something Guanxiong wasn't too clear on. For example, killing a deity. Sumo said with smile. Kill a divine tribulation? Guanxiong felt his head buzzing. Sumo, think carefully. The number of deity tribulation cultivators on the White Bone continent could be counted on one hand. I'm just at the early stage of the God tribulation realm. If you must kill a deity tribulation, I am your best choice. Understand? Oh. Sumo had a look of sudden realization and smiled. That's right. I'll think about it. Guanxiong was instantly speechless. At the same time, he could not help but shiver. Sumo's realm came from the empowerment. The next step, after the great perfection of the soul transformation realm, was the deity tribulation. However, in the past 100 years, Sumo's realm had never increased. In fact, it was normal for a cultivator at the great perfection of the soul transformation realm to advance to the deity tribulation realm. For many cultivators, the soul transformation realm was the peak. Didn't the Earth Wheel ancestor Nyesiang of the 5 Wheels already reach the end of his lifespan and passed away? Every cultivator's fate was different. Some would spend their entire lives in foundation establishment, some might spend their entire lives in core formation, and of course, some would spend their lives in soul transformation. Guanxiong himself used 300 years to break through to the soul transformation realm. The early stage of the deity tribulation realm might be Guanxiong's limit. However, Sumo did not think so. He, Sumo, should have no limit. In the past 100 years, the first few decades, Sumo was muddle-headed. He was immersed in the bitterness of the past and was unable to extricate himself. However, in the last 30 to 40 years, Sumo always sought a breakthrough. However, he was unable to do so. Sumo had already memorized the cultivation techniques that the windmill philosophers imparted to him. It could be said that the current Sumo had already integrated the strengths of the windmill philosophers into one body. Beast taming, weapon refining, elixirs, formations, and so on, Sumo was proficient in all of them. On the Bone mainland, Sumo was definitely the #1 cultivator below the deity tribulation realm. However, Guanxiong believed that Sumo did not have the ability to kill a deity tribulation realm cultivator. However, what Sumo had learned was definitely not ordinary. Sumo had already cultivated the second realm of the unwithering technique, the unwithering bones. This was also thanks to the fact that he had refined the bones in the Silent Death Valley. Cultivating the unwithering bones could be said to be a smooth journey. Now, if he wanted to cultivate again, he could only cultivate the third realm, the unwithering soul. However, according to the requirements of the unwithering technique, only deity tribulation realm cultivators could cultivate the unwithering soul. Therefore, Sumo's realm could be said to have reached a bottleneck. And this bottleneck was something that Sumo did not want to discuss too deeply with Guanxiong. After the Battle of 5 Wheels, Sumo's personality had undergone a huge change. The windmill philosophers, Mu Jinghong, Bai Lai, Guanxiong, and many others had hidden many things from him. Although those things might have been well-intentioned, and there were even many things that could not be told to Sumo, Sumo still felt like he had been deceived. This kind of feeling made Sumo even more unwilling to share everything that was in his heart with others. After living together for 100 years, Sumo and Guan Xiong's friendship was not shallow. Perhaps Sumo was willing to fight to the death for Guan Xiong, but he was not willing to reveal everything to him. In fact, Guan Xiong treated Sumo the same way. Until now, Sumo did not know what the so-called successor of the immortal Void Realm meant. Moreover, every once in a while, Guan Xiong would disappear for a few days. Sumo never asked about Guan Xiong's whereabouts. Of course, Guan Xiong would not explain it to Sumo either. However, Sumo's intuition told him that Guan Xiong must have something to ask of him. It was just that Guan Xiong had never mentioned it. The two of them were more like a cooperative playmate. Although they did not have to guard against each other, they still maintained some freedom. In the bottom of their hearts, they both had their deepest secret. Sumo and Guan Xiong secretly communicated, but on the surface, they were just like ordinary worshippers. They had a rough view of the entire front courtyard of the temple. Unknowingly, it was already dusk. Dong dong, dong, the sound of drums came from inside the ancient temple. That was the drum sound of the 10,000 Desolation Temple's worshippers. Once the drums sounded, other than the worshippers who had already decided to stay in the temple, everyone else had to go down the mountain. Chapter 196. In this world, there would always be people who did not follow the rules. One was a scoundrel, the other was a powerhouse. The Wanwang Temple's Drum of Dusk had a total of 3 rings. Although there were only 18 rings with slight differences in speed, the interval between each ring was 15 minutes. In other words, 3 rings would take at least 30 minutes. After the 3 rings, the bell would ring again after another 15 minutes. After the bell rings, the Wanwang Temple would close its doors. Normally, worshippers who understood the rules would leave the temple before the 3 rings. The worshippers who stayed overnight would also return to their rooms. After the bell rings, the Wanwang Temple forbade people from walking around the temple. This was because it was said to be the Wanwang Temple's prohibition. Guan Xiong knew about this, so Sumo and Guan Xiong had already booked a guest room. At this moment the drum rang 3 times. Most of the worshippers, regardless of immortals or mortals, either left the mountain or returned to their rooms. However, there were a few female cultivators who refused to leave. When they entered the world, they might be powerhouses, but when they left, they were scoundrels. This was because the powerhouses were outside the world. They were the female cultivators who had teased the young monk during the day. The courtyard was empty, and the 4 stood in the center. Beside them, there were 2 elderly monks who were trying to persuade them. 4 female benefactors. We really don't have any guest rooms here. The 3 rings have already been sounded, and the bell will ring in less than 15 minutes. I hope you can leave the mountain as soon as possible, one of the monks said. What's the hurry? The yellow-clothed female cultivator laughed. We are indeed tired and weary. It's easy to go up the mountain, but difficult to go down. The sky was getting dark. Sir, how do you want us to leave the mountain? That's right. Buddhists are compassionate. Sir, please take pity on us. The green-clothed female cultivator said. 4 female benefactors. It's not that we are unreasonable and compassionate. It's just that the Dharma assembly is approaching, and the guest rooms are all full. We can't make room for you, another monk advised patiently. It's all right. The pink-clothed female cultivator, who had suffered a loss at the hands of the gatekeeper, laughed. If any young master has a spacious bedroom, we can sleep on the floor. Right. He was right. We sisters are not picky. We only hope that master and sir will take us in for one night. This little girl will definitely repay you. The red-clothed woman covered her mouth and laughed. Her charming eyes were full of ripples. The other 3 also acted coquettishly and begged at the same time. At this time, there were still a dozen or so southern domain cultivators who had yet to enter their rooms. Some of them couldn't help but frown slightly, while others were drooling. However, none of them dared to provoke the female cultivators of the Bliss Palace. Those female cultivators were all vicious beauties. Sumo and Guan Xiong sneered inwardly. It seemed that these female cultivators had not given up yet. However, Guan Xiong's eyes were not idle. It would be a waste not to look. These female cultivators were all foundation establishment late stage or even peak stage cultivators. The martial arts of the Bliss Palace were so enchanting, how could they be ordinary? Both of them had mortal physique. At this moment, the fragrance assailed their noses and the soft words entered their ears. Their minds were a bit shaken, unable to maintain their calm. Ladies, the two cultivators stared blankly at the beauties in front of them, unable to speak clearly. He. The female cultivators giggled, showing off their seductiveness. The two cultivators even saw an illusion. The four female cultivators seemed to be taking off their clothes. At this moment, someone chanted a gatha, "May the sound of this bell surpass the Dharma realm, to be heard by all in the darkness of the iron encirclement, to be cleansed of the dust, to be enlightened by all." Then, the Sanskrit echoed. Dong, dong, dong. The bell in the Wanhuang temple rang for the first time. The bell rang for the first time and the gatha was sung. It rang from the heavens to the underworld. The sonorous sound echoed and the gatha was sung. It rang throughout the entire Wanhuang temple, and even the entire Wanhuang peak. Those who heard the bell felt their souls tremble, and all distracting thoughts were cleared. The two cultivators who were still a little shaken just now straightened their bodies, their expressions solemn. At the same time, the two of them chanted the name of Buddha, feeling ashamed. At this moment, all the cultivators gathered their thoughts. The Buddhist voice echoed, purifying their minds. Sumo and Guan Xiong felt their hearts clear. Sumo's expression was complicated, as if she was thinking about something. He seemed to have heard the bell somewhere before, but it was so faint that he couldn't find it. That kind of power was hard to describe. When the four female cultivators heard the bell, their expressions became serious, and all their charm techniques collapsed. The bell rang for 108 times. The gatha was chanted 3 times. One sentence at a time. Everyone who heard the bell felt a sense of conversion. At this moment, on the mountain and at the foot of the mountain, many believers put their palms together and kowtowed. Escape from the sea of bitterness, and become enlightened. Sumo chanted in her heart. Forceful, calm. Dong. Dong, as the bell rang, all the worshippers returned to their rooms one after another, and didn't stay any longer. Sumo and Guan Xiong also returned to their rooms. The lingering sound of the bell seemed to linger. Creak. The gate of the Wanhuang temple slowly closed. The two cultivators faced the four female cultivators, put their palms together, and bowed. Without saying anything else, they silently retreated. The four female cultivators stood in the courtyard in a daze, and the respect in their hearts increased. At that moment, they felt an indescribable fear. At this moment, there were 6 auras circling around the entire Wanhuang temple. 2 of them were the 2 little monks who closed the gate, and the other 4 were the 4 little monks who guarded the front yard. 6 little monks, 6 nascent soul cultivators. However, the auras disappeared in an instant. Amit Ba. During the day, the little monk who was molested by the pink-clothed female cultivator smiled and said, "The sea of bitterness is boundless, repent and you will be saved. 4 female benefactors, since you can't leave the mountain, please stay in the woodshed for the night." After saying that, the little monk pointed with one finger. The tip of his finger emitted a Buddhist light. The Buddhist light floated like a lantern, and directly floated in front of the 4 female cultivators. "Everyone, follow the lantern, and you will reach your destination. I won't send you off. Remember, don't go out at night, or else you will fall straight to hell." The little monk bowed to the 4 female cultivators. Whoosh, the 2 little monks disappeared at the same time, and the remaining 4 auras also disappeared. The entire Wanwang temple suddenly became as dark as ink. There was no night or starlight. Huh! The 4 female cultivators' expressions changed. The Buddhist light was leisurely, and it could only illuminate the area 3 feet in front of them. The 4 female cultivators could only follow the Buddhist light. After a few turns, they finally arrived at a door. They pushed the door open, and sure enough, it was a woodshed. The inside was tidy and spacious, but there were no beds or blankets. The 4 of them could only sit on the floor. However, at this moment, the 4 female cultivators did not speak. Puff, the Buddhist light was extinguished. The 4 female cultivators closed the door at the same time. At that moment, they felt a chill run down their spines. Because, if it wasn't for the Buddhist light just now, even though they were late and perfected foundation establishment cultivators, they felt that they definitely wouldn't be able to reach the woodshed. In the darkness, there seemed to be many invisible creatures peeping at them. That feeling was too terrifying. Actually, it wasn't just them. That was the feeling that all the cultivators who stayed overnight in Wanhuang Temple felt. Chapter 197. The day was like Buddha's realm, the night was like hell. The night in Wanhuang Temple was not normal. At this moment, there was not a trace of Buddha Chi, which was very different from the day. A mysterious and terrifying aura filled the entire front yard. No one wanted to take a step out of the guest room, especially the cultivators. This was because they could sense things that mortals could not. Many mortals had already fallen asleep under the cover of the night. If one pushed open the door, one step would lead to hell. Sumo frowned at Guan Xiong and asked, "What's going on?" The change in the Myriad Desolation Temple gave Su Mo an ominous feeling. At this moment, Guan Xiong frowned and shook his head. At the same time, he looked out of the window. "Sumo, this is my first time staying in Wanwang Temple. This temple is really strange." "Why? Can't you spread out your consciousness?" Sumo asked. This was because Sumo's soul-dissolving consciousness seemed to be lost in Wanhuang Temple's night. Sumo could only sense endless darkness. "I guess we're in the same situation." Guan Xiong smiled bitterly. "My consciousness seems to be led into the darkness by an unknown force. I can't see anything. That power is unknown." Guan Xiong secretly sucked in a breath of cold air. This was because he had never encountered such a situation on the White Bone mainland. At the same time, Guan Xiong's interest in Wanhuang Temple increased. In the past, he had never encountered such a thing. Hearing Guan Xiong's words, Suemo couldn't help but be startled. Guan Xiong was a god tribulation. A god tribulation was the highest existence on the White Bone mainland. Although the other cultivators also felt strange, they were full of respect for Wanhuang Temple and did not dare to probe. Since there was nothing to worry about in the room and no one disturbed them, they gradually fell asleep. At this moment, the 4 female cultivators in the woodshed could not sleep. This was because they had come to Wanhuang Temple with a mission. "Senior sister, don't you think the night is strange and scary?" asked the female cultivator in green. "Indeed." The female cultivator in pink frowned. "Just now, there seemed to be something following us, but it was afraid of the Buddha light and did not dare to approach." "Then what do we do?" the yellow-robed female cultivator asked. "Do we still go out?" The pink-clothed grand senior sister frowned without saying a word. The red-clothed woman said, "I think we shouldn't go out. This Wanhuang Temple is too strange. Didn't that little monk just say, 'Don't go out at night or you'll fall straight to hell'?" "But we haven't finished Elder Gua's task yet," the yellow-clothed female cultivator said. "Humph." At this moment, Grand Senior Sister in Pink couldn't help but sneer. "I don't think Elder Gua has any good intentions in giving us this mission." During the day, I probed the little monk, but I couldn't get close to him at all, so I suffered a disadvantage. The pink-robed female cultivator frowned. The Myriad Desolation Temple claims to have 300 nascent soul cultivators. That's not a joke. Our bewitching techniques can't move his soul at all. The sound of the bell at dusk makes me even more uneasy. In my opinion, even if that elder Gua came himself, it would be useless. If we get a monk and our dual cultivation fails, we will most likely lose our lives. If a nascent soul cultivator gets angry, the four of us will be reduced to ashes in an instant. The pink-robed Grand Senior Sister was right. The other three female cultivators nodded wordlessly. But it won't be easy for us to pass the night like this. The yellow-cloved female cultivator said worriedly, if Elder Gua blames us, it won't be easy. The punishments of the Bliss Palace were very cruel. The pink-robed Grand Senior Sister laughed. Third Sister is right. However, just because we don't go out doesn't mean we can't attract men. Just now, I saw that many of those cultivators weren't strong enough. This woodshed is spacious. If we can attract a few of them, first, we can enjoy ourselves so we won't miss the night. Second, we can shut Elder Gua's mouth. Third, if they can't make it to the woodshed, we can see what's so strange about the Myriad Desolation Temple at night. Grand Senior Sister, you're right. The other three female cultivators agreed. Thus, the four of them looked at each other and smiled. Looking again, the four female cultivators each took out a long incense stick from their storage pouches. However, the color of the incense stick was different. Pink, red, yellow, and green. The four colors were exactly the same as their clothing. Butterfly-luring incense. That was the secret art of the Bliss Palace, specifically used to attract bees and butterflies. The incense was very unique, and it had a strong aphrodisiac effect. Those who weren't strong enough would lose control after smelling it. The incense was divided into four colors because everyone's incense was infused with their own spiritual chi. Those who smelled the different incense would find different female cultivators to have sex with, and they wouldn't be interested in other female cultivators. The Bliss Palace specialized in such things, which was why they were known to be very powerful and specialized. On the White Bone Continent, countless male cultivators had been sucked dry by them and turned into medicinal dregs. The four female cultivators were all high-level Foundation establishment cultivators, and they were usually playboys. Naturally, they wouldn't want a night without fun. Even if they couldn't get the little monk, it was better than nothing if someone took the bait. Pust! The four of them lit up the butterfly-luring incense at the same time. Puff! At the same time, the four of them blew on it gently. The fragrance drifted through the crack of the door and into the Myriad Desolation Temple. One had to admit that the Bliss secret art was extraordinary. The butterfly-luring incense could spread for hundreds of feet, and it would gradually disperse and condense. It wouldn't be completely blown away by the wind, and it wouldn't gather at a single point. 4 incense sticks of 4 different colors slowly dispersed in the dark night of the Myriad Desolation Temple, heading straight for each guest room. Sumo and Guan Xiong's spiritual senses were the strongest. Both of them were meditating in the guest room, but a faint fragrance wafted over. The two of them couldn't help but open their eyes and look at each other. The butterfly-luring incense. Guan Xiong lifted his nose and sniffed, then chuckled, as expected of the female cultivators of the Bliss Palace. How dare they seek pleasure in the pure land of Buddhism? Guan Xiong took 2 deep breaths and pretended to be intoxicated. How sweet! Unfortunately, Master Guan isn't interested tonight. Otherwise, I'll fight them for 300 rounds. The butterfly-luring incense was useless against Guan Xiong and Sumo. It was because their cultivation levels were too high. If an early-stage nascent soul cultivator's mind wasn't pure, they might be affected a little. However, it was useless against soul-dissolving cultivators and God's ordeal. Looks like we're in for a good show. Guan Xiong laughed. He knew that there were many low-level cultivators staying in the guest rooms of the Myriad Desolation Temple. Those below the nascent soul realm without secret arts or treasures, unless they had an extremely determined mind, would find it hard to resist the butterfly-luring incense. Sumo, on the other hand, didn't say much. She just wanted to see what was in the night. At that moment, the most miserable and the happiest were the cultivators in the other guest rooms, especially the male cultivators who were drooling over the beauties during the day. When the fragrance entered their noses, they instantly started hallucinating. 4 colored beauties fluttered over. They took off their clothes and looked at each other seductively. The butterfly-luring incense immediately messed up their divine senses. The weakest cultivators in the southern region of the Bone Continent who could participate in the Divine Sun assembly were at least at the Foundation establishment realm. However, these cultivators couldn't resist the butterfly-luring incense. Creak. The door creaked, and 5 or 6 cultivators pushed open the door and walked out. They looked intoxicated, as if they were sleepwalking, and headed straight for the woodshed in the front yard. Chapter 198. The screams were frightening, especially in the boundless night. Moreover, the screams came one after another, not stopping. At that moment, Sumo and Guan Xiong felt their hearts palpitate. This was because their divine senses could not detect the cause and effect. Towards the unknown, whether it was a cultivator or a mortal, they were both curious and fearful. At that moment, without a doubt, fear occupied every cultivator's heart. Guan Xiong's eyes were locked. Sumo opened his hand and the broken bamboo pole appeared in his hand. If this wasn't Wanwang Temple, Sumo would have already rushed out to investigate. If he could enter and leave Silent Death Valley freely, what was there to be afraid of? However, Guan Xiong shook his head at Sumo, indicating that he should not act rashly. Actually, the reason was simple. This was Wanwang Temple. If something really happened, it should be solved by Wanwang Temple. Currently, it was not Sumo and Guan Xiong's turn to act. A few more screams were heard. Among them, there was a female voice. The screams did not feel like they came from a human. Everyone who heard them felt their hair stand on end and their scalps go numb. At this moment, if one stood in Wanwang Temple, they would see that many guest rooms were lit up. However, the dim yellow light could only pass through the window lattices and could not illuminate the night. The light seemed to be swallowed by the darkness. The butterfly fragrance was enchanting. However, the mournful screams woke everyone up. No one else came out from the courtyard. Everything gradually calmed down. However, after a while, low voices came from the entire temple. There were both men and women in the voices. They sounded like resentment, admiration, tears, and complaints. The voices were filled with sorrow and sorrow. Gradually, the voices became mixed with the sound of bells and drums, the sound of wooden fish, and then the sound of Sanskrit. It was like a Dharma assembly. Namo Amitabhaya, Dota Jia Duo Yi, Duo Di Yi Amitba. Rebirth mantra. Guan Xiong laughed coldly when he heard this. This Wanwang Temple really knows how to play tricks. I didn't see the little monks guarding the front yard just now. Why are there people coming to Rebirth now? That sound seems to be coming from underground. Sumo frowned. Yes. Guan Xiong nodded his head and said seriously, there's something strange about this Wanwang Temple. It seems like I, the descendant of the immortal void realm, is about to come out and take charge. Sumo chuckled. The successor of the immortal void realm? Take charge of the situation? Other than suppressing the bones with the 7 chess pieces, Sumo had never seen Guan Xiong do anything serious in the past 100 years. In fact, Sumo didn't know that keeping a good eye on Sumo was Guan Xiong's top priority. Because the heart of the white bone was with Sumo. As for the white bone heart in Guan Xiong's hands, it wouldn't show the word red dust at all. At this moment, the sound of Sanskrit gradually faded. Everything finally returned to normal. After that, there were no other movements. In the latter half of the night, Sumo and Guan Xiong finally found peace. It was a quiet night. In his dreams, he suddenly heard someone singing Agatha. Hearing the sound of the bell, worries fade, wisdom grows, bodhi increases, leaving hell, leaving the fire pit, wishing to become a Buddha and save all living beings. Dang, 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 inside the Wanwang temple, the gatha sounded and the morning bell rang again. The bell rang 108 times. Inside the Wanwang temple, it welcomed the morning light. When the bell rang for the first time, Sumo and Guan Xiong had already opened their eyes. However, the darkness outside did not disperse. However, as the bell rang, the sky gradually brightened inside the Wanhuang temple. When the last bell rang, the entire Wanhuang temple was finally brightened. Just as Sumo and Guan Xiong pushed open the door, they heard someone shouting. When they looked again, there were already many people gathered in the courtyard of the temple. In the courtyard, there were actually 8 or 9 corpses lying haphazardly. They should be the cultivators who were tempted by the bewitching incense last night and pushed open the door. They were scattered all over the courtyard and their deaths were extremely horrifying. All of their faces were ashen white and blood flowed from their orifices. Their eyes were wide open and they died with grievances. Their corpses were all mutilated and incomplete. Some were missing arms, some were broken legs, and some even had their livers dug out. They seemed to have been bitten by something. There were even 2 or 3 of them whose bodies were filled with bloody holes, as if thousands of snakes had pierced through their bodies. It was unbearable to look at them directly. However, all the blood had already dried up. Amitabha! The faces of the 2 Buddhist monks from yesterday turned pale. It seemed like they had never seen something like that before. Amitabha! At that moment, 2 little monks who were guarding the door suddenly appeared out of nowhere. One of them was leading the way for the female cultivator from the Bliss Palace. Sin. The little monk looked at the corpses in the courtyard and frowned, but he did not panic. Instead, he ran in the direction of the woodshed. The crowd followed. Naturally, Sumo and Guan Xiong wanted to see what was going on as well. They arrived at the woodshed. When they looked again, the door to the woodshed was already open. However, the inside was a horrible sight and extremely filthy. 3 of the female cultivators were completely naked. Their bodies were covered in bruises and bruises. They were also bleeding from their orifices. They had already died a violent death. As for the other female cultivator in pink, her clothes did not cover her body. She was naked from the waist down, shivering as she curled up in a corner of the woodshed. Ghost? The female cultivator's eyes seemed to have been blinded by something. Her face was covered in blood. She seemed to have lost her mind. She did not look like a cultivator who had completed the foundation establishment realm at all. Sigh. The little monk shook his head and let out a long sigh. Then, the little monk waved his hand. A monk's robe wrapped around the woman who was still alive. Excellent. When he looked again, he saw that the little monk had formed a hand seal. A ball of white light rose from his palm and wrapped around the female cultivator. The ball of white light then carried the female cultivator to the backyard of the old temple. The other little monk formed a seal with his hand as well. Several white flames appeared between his 10 fingers. Sizzle, the flames spread out and incinerated the 3 female corpses and the corpses in the courtyard. Neither the blood nor the bones were left behind. Sorry for the disturbance, everyone. Amitabha! The 2 little monks put their palms together and apologized to the crowd at the same time. The Buddha is in the human world, and the devil is in the underworld. However, the Buddha and the devil are 1 step away. Dear benefactors, please abide by our temple's rule of staying indoors at night. Otherwise, if an accident happens, we can only express our regret. Please keep your mouths shut about what happened last night. Otherwise, if you bring trouble upon yourself, even the Buddha will not be able to save you. Amitabha! At that moment, the 2 monks and the 4 little monks who appeared out of nowhere chanted the name of Buddha at the same time. Dong, 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 the morning drum sounded. It was still 3 times. After 3 times, the temple gate would be opened. The Wanwang Temple would welcome a new day. However, the cultivators present were all exchanging glances with one another at that moment. The Buddha was in the human world, and the devil was in the underworld. However, the Buddha and the devil were one step away. What did that mean? The Wanwang Temple was known as the White Bone Temple of the 3 holy grounds of white bones. Were there demons and ghosts here? There was even an early-stage core formation realm cultivator among the dead. If there was a devil here, how could it be peaceful? Did those cultivators die for nothing? However, the cultivators could only criticize in their hearts. They did not dare to ask. After all, the female cultivators from the Bliss Palace were dead. Who else would dare to speak up? It all depended on the Bliss Palace's attitude in the future. However, a few timid cultivators chose to leave the mountain as soon as the temple gate was opened. The fact that there was a devil in the land of Buddhism was unbelievable to them. If that was the case, it was fine if they did not participate in the Divine Sun Assembly. Chapter 199. The gate of the temple was wide open. Everything was the same as before. 2 days passed in silence. These 2 nights were peaceful. No one went out at night, and naturally, there were no more sounds of souls being released. However, less than 30% of the cultivators and devotees who stayed in the 10,000 Desolation Temple that day remained. Many people hurried down the mountain in the end. However, when someone left, someone else came. Therefore, the Wanwang Temple was still full every day. Of course, the events of that night still spread. However, there were always people in this world who believed that seeing was believing. Therefore, the truth became a legend in the end. He was even despised by many believers of the 1000 Desolation Temple. They believed that it was slander and slander against the Wanwang Temple. The 3rd day was the Divine Sun Assembly. That day was extremely lively. After the morning bell, the drum sounded 3 times. The doors of the Temple of 10,000 Desolation were wide open, allowing all mortals to rejoice together. Almost all of the cultivation sects in the southern region had sent people here. He listened to the Dharma and offered generous gifts to the desolate ones. 6:45 in the morning, the Divine Sun Dharma Assembly began. Some monks praised loudly. In an instant, the bell and drum sounded together, and the conch played in unison. A total of 7 senior monks from the Wanwang Temple attended the assembly. Under the protection of 27 young monks and 36 lay disciples, they walked towards the altar in a grandiose manner. The believers on both sides stood solemnly with their palms clasped together. The emissaries and some ordinary devotees knelt on both sides of the passageway to welcome them. The scene was solemn and sacred. Sumo and Guan Xiong also clasped their hands together in the crowd. The 7 eminent monks were all at the peak of the nascent soul realm, a step into the soul transformation realm. However, their ages weren't that great, basically all of them middle-aged. They wore red kasaya, their appearances dignified. The 27 little monks were all at the early stage or mid-stage of nascent soul realm. Of the 300 nascent soul cultivators, only 1/8 of them showed up. Worthy of being the immortal temple. Guan Xiong transmitted sound. This spell assembly's lineup is enough to sweep through the white bones. There isn't a deity sect in the entire bone land that has so many nascent soul cultivators. That is why, if we really have to evaluate the number 1 immortal sect in the white bone world, then the immortal temple is fully deserving of the title. Guan Xiong praised. Because he knew that the so-called Holy Wheel Ancient Ruins was nothing but a pile of ruins. The immortal void realm was an ethereal place, and could not be considered a celestial sect. Moreover, his brother was the only inheritor of the immortal void realm. The white-robed young woman who spoke to him was not the descendant of the immortal illusionary realm. I wonder which continent young Miss Meow is playing on right now? That was why the immortal temple was definitely number 1. Unfortunately, the immortal temple's roots were in the white bone continent. Otherwise, there would have been a chance of improving it. Hearing Guan Xiong's words, Sumo didn't say anything. He didn't really care who was number one in white bones. Sumo was just waiting for what she needed. Sprinkling water, burning incense, chanting sutras, prostrating in prostration, the process of the Divine Sun Dharma assembly was relatively complicated. However, every single one of them had strict rules and was filled with a sense of ceremony. Guan Xiong had always scoffed at such things. This was because he believed that this was all a trick to deceive the mortals. Although Sumo didn't have the same thoughts as Guan Xiong, she didn't enjoy it either. On the other hand, the mortals and even some low-level cultivators were very devout. He was respectful and sincere. In fact, it was also because of this that their hearts were at peace. Thus, the entire Dharma assembly could be considered grand and solemn. Everything went according to plan. The Divine Sun Dharma assembly lasted for a total of 9 days. In the first few days, it was basically all sorts of monks reciting scriptures. Then, the various Dharma masters ascended the altar to preach Buddhist teachings and enlighten the masses. In the next few days, Sumo and Guan Xiong sometimes listened and sometimes didn't, but they still benefited greatly. When they had nothing to do, the two would go sightseeing. They had roughly figured out the situation around the Wanhuang Temple. They both knew that the main event was yet to come. During the last 3 days of the Dharma assembly, they would answer questions for the masses. This was no small matter. That was when the Wanhuang Temple's power would be revealed. Because sometimes the immortal sects on the White Bone continent would cause trouble again. Answering questions could be considered a battle between cultivators. On the 7th day of the Dharma assembly. The first 6 days of the Dharma assembly could be said to be illuminated by Buddhist light. Every day, there were countless people listening to the Wanhuang Temple's scriptures. The mountain was high and the road was long, but it couldn't stop the believer's faith. Listening to the sound of Buddha could be exchanged for a lifetime of peace. On the 7th day, the 7 Dharma masters gathered on the altar again. A few days ago, the Dharma masters had already taken turns to preach. Each of them had profound Buddhist knowledge and great wisdom. Today, they gathered here again to answer questions for the masses. The 7 Dharma masters sat high, and 3 young monks stood on each side. The other listeners surrounded the altar, but they had to maintain silence. Apart from that, this assembly was hosted by a highly respected old householder. Those who had doubts could raise their hands. Those who were chosen by the old householder could ask questions. Those who raised questions could designate a Dharma master to answer. If they didn't, any Dharma master could answer. Amit Ba. The old householder put his palms together towards everyone around the altar and said in a clear voice, Buddha can help all living beings, but all living beings are difficult to help. What can we do? Because our hearts are lost, it is like a fog. If the fog doesn't disperse, it will eventually become a barrier. Today, the Dharma masters borrow the light of the Divine Sun to be merciful. We are willing to answer the questions of all living beings, and we are willing to cross the lost heart. Everyone, if there is anything you don't understand, please voice it here. The old householder's voice wasn't loud, but it was clearly transmitted to everyone's ears. After the old householder finished speaking, there was no noise or many people raising their hands to ask questions. Instead, everyone was silent. Everyone was waiting. The first question of the Divine Sun assembly was not ordinary. The old householder seemed to have hosted the assembly before, so he smiled faintly and wasn't in a hurry. After a while, a gray-clothed middle-aged cultivator slowly stood up and cupped his hands. I am Mei Wanyan, a disciple of the Southern Domain's Sky River sect. Greetings, householder and Dharma masters. I have a few questions, can I ask them? The gray-clothed cultivator's tone was polite, but he was a core formation cultivator. Although the Sky River sect wasn't a first-class sect in the White Bone mainland, it still had a place. Core formation cultivators were definitely not ordinary people in the Sky River sect. A core formation cultivator asking the first question of the Divine Sun assembly was quite important. Benefactor May please speak? The old householder said. The gray-clothed cultivator smiled faintly. May I ask, Dharma Masters, where is Buddha? The moment this question came out, many of the listeners frowned slightly. Because this question itself contained a hint of doubt. The gray-clothed cultivator didn't deny the existence of Buddha, he only asked where Buddha was. This was the first question, and it was already quite sharp. Good question. Guan Xiong couldn't help but laugh. The 7 Dharma Masters heard the gray-clothed cultivator's question, but their expressions were calm. Mei Wanyin didn't specify which Dharma Master to answer. Thus, the Dharma Master sitting on the far left slowly spoke. Benefactor Mei, Buddha is in the heart. Mei Wanyin smiled. The Dharma Master's answer seemed to be within his expectations. Dharma Master said that Buddha is in the heart. Doesn't that mean that everyone has Buddha in their heart? Benefactor Mei, you are right. The Dharma Master nodded with a smile. All beings are Buddha. Mei Wanyin nodded and said, just now the householder said that Buddha saves all beings, but all beings are hard to save. However, Dharma Master said that all beings are Buddha. Isn't that contradictory? Dharma Master, if all beings are Buddha, then Buddha is all beings. Why is there a need to save them? If there is a need to save them, then who is saving them, and who is Buddha saving? Wah! The gray-clothed Mei Wanyin's questions pressed on, extremely sharp. Guan Xiong watched with a smile. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.